I suppose, James, we should just get started here.
Yeah,
And I'm excited to talk with you today because I already told you, like, I know nothing about anything other than the fact that you were native bikes. And
hmm
I don't think we've ever met or
no,
really talked before. And so I'm kind of excited to hear the saga that is
yeah,
native bikes and learn a little bit more about you, too, you know?
yeah, yeah. Well, um, then I guess it would just kind of start with an introduction. I live in what's called Central Florida. It's like the greater Orlando area, um, and I was born in Atlanta, and we moved back down to Florida. That's where my entire family is from, is here. And we moved back down here, and I've lived here ever since. I live in the same kind of small city that I was born in, Winter Park. Um, and like I did, like most kids, you're 10, 11, 12 years old, you get a bicycle to ride around the neighborhood or whatever. And uh, my dad was really adamant about getting me a cool bike. And I got like a really weird 90s race bike, big fat aluminum tubing. But I thought it was super cool because it looked like futuristic and looked like it had all this technology into it. And then I started getting BMX magazines, and it's just a thing that I'm doing because I'm a kid. I need a bike to ride. That's how I get around. But I have pride in it because I've put stickers on it the way I want to, just like any young kid. And then when I get to high school is when I really meet like people who are serious about riding, and that's people like Dave Mahoney, like we talked about. I've known Dave Mahoney since we were 6, 7 years old. So it's really cool to see him still riding and doing things. We live on other sides of the country, but I get to catch up with him. That was really my introduction to BMX, was somebody like him. And even though he's like this dialed like park rider, David rode everything. When I met him, he was a racer. So his dad took him to the races every weekend, and there were a couple of other guys that we rode with, and his dad was all about taking them to a new city. And we were in like eighth grade, which I don't even know what that is. That's like, you're way teens. That's like
Yeah,
14, 15 years old.
12,
And
13, 14. Yeah.
yeah, and David and his buddies would come back from racing a weekend in Tallahassee with photos of them grinding legit handrails. Like, we're little teenagers, and even then I'm recognizing, like, what? How is that even possible, Um, and I have this overwhelming interest in BMX now because I have friends that are really good at it. I feel like I have access because I have some props videos and I have some magazines, and uh, I'm riding a lot, like my sophomore year in high school, and I go to the local crappy bike shop and I see this kid I've never seen riding before, and to me I'm like, another BMXer. That's super weird. And it was this guy Justin, and I talked to him for a minute, and he goes, "I'm going over to this place, the Castleberry Trails." And I was like, "Oh, I've heard of it, but I heard it's kind of far away." And he's like, "No, it's just right up the road." And I went, right? This is maybe 2002, 2003. I went with him, and I was too afraid to go across the street. I could see these huge jumps and a lot of people at the end of this driveway. And I was like, "Oh God, this might be the coolest place I've ever seen." And I go back the next day and I sit across the street, and somebody kind of, waves me over. I'm like, "Oh Jesus, like, what's up?" And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I ride BMX." I didn't want to just kind of come over and interject myself, but it was people like this kid Aaron and Ricky Bates. Um, the Castleberry Trails is its own crazy story to be told, but it was where this dude Aaron grew up. And him and his dad lived there. His whole family lived there. Eventually, him and his dad and his stepmom lived there. But him and Ricky Bates were like best friends growing up, and they raced. And they kept getting in trouble for going in the woods and digging jumps, like, and the parents recognize that, like, this isn't actually a bad problem. They're not doing anything to get in trouble. They just have nowhere to go. And so the dude Aaron's dad was like, "If you guys do good this race season and you get good grades, I'll buy a load of clay and you guys can build a jump at the end of the yard." And I think it was like an acre and a half of land. And the dude had no idea that that was about to become what it was. You know what I mean? And Once I was actively being able to go there and knew people by name, I had no interest in doing anything other than like, as soon as school is over, I'm running home to grab my bike, ride my bike the couple of miles across town. So we had phones, I guess, but we didn't, it wasn't like it is now. And so like people would be like, I'm gonna go ride. I don't want this phone in my pocket. I'm gonna go ride without my phone or whatever. So I would just ride every single day to the Castleberry Trails house and somebody was gonna be there. And when I say somebody, like back then we're talking about, I don't know, at any point 20, 25 different guys could be there. And I will also preface this by saying that I at no point was ever a trails rider. I never really rode jumps. I was a street rider and a very amateur skate park rider, and so I'll talk a lot about the trails. And I did live there and all these things at one point, but I don't want anyone to get the impression that I helped those guys build those jumps or I rode those jumps. I was lucky enough to get to watch it and understand how jumps are built, understand the mechanics of trails from a perspective of a fan and a friend. But incorporating that time was also not very far up the road was Mission Skate Park, which was Chad DeGroot's first park. And that park was like, still to this day, I think to all of us in Central Florida, it's just like, if I ever won the lottery, man, I'd rebuild Mission Skate Park, And it was the place where we all grew up. And there was a generation above us that was Chad's age. And they were all people we looked up to. And Chad built this indoor park that we would go to not knowing what it was going to create for us. It was going to set the path of like how we are social and how we talk to each other. And it was the first time I felt like there was a place that I could go to and I was normal. Like BMX was not cool at my high school, like it was not cool to be a BMXer. It was not a thing that we were doing because we were trying to be popular, because that was definitely not the route. And I was definitely not popular in high school. The other thing too is all my friends other than like David went to other high schools. So all of my friends in high school I didn't, and I got a job at the local bike shop kind of close to the Castleberry Trails. I loved bicycles and I just wanted to work on bikes. And I thought maybe one day I'll get to like have a real job, because there's people who are managers at this bike shop and they have a career and a way to make money doing this. And I kind of was like, I think that would be really cool. And I bounced around local bike shops in Orlando and ended up working for a bike shop called Outspoken. They used to run a mail order, OBMX, mail order that hauls
I remember
axe.
that one.
And there's a guy that's somehow a Pennsylvania and a Florida legend named Mike Cottle. And he's, I guess, he's like a generation somewhere between myself and Chad DeGroot. But he was always like the coolest, scariest dude in the room. He was responsible for all kinds of sets of trails, or back before he moved back to Florida, he would come to town for like a weekend and completely construct a set of jumps or a new line or something with a couple of guys and leave town. And it was like, people would be like, yeah, that's the guy. His parents own Outspoken. And he had a brother, Austin. They were both incredibly talented riders. The point is, Mike and Arden Cottle, the guys that the couple that owned this shop, they had a gigantic trailer they packed out that they would bring to all the national races. They would support any freestyle event they could. They were the only vendor at the UGP Roots Jams. And Big Mike was like, he only wanted to sell. I mean, obviously, when you own a bike shop, you have to have price points for everybody, but he wanted to have the nicest, coolest, most innovative stuff in the bike shop. So he would have the normal entry level, mid level, and then we would custom build road bikes, not for a customer, or a downhill mountain bike just to have as a bike. And I learned a lot about technology. I learned about the importance of maintaining your tools, having all the knowledge that you need. And I was like, okay, this is a different kind of, I'm making a career out of this. The guy used to build transmissions for Ford, and decided like, I like bikes. And so I'm seeing all these people that are going, I can live this normal life, or I can make something happen with bicycles. And definitely Big Mike at Outspoken made it to where I loved bicycles almost more than I loved riding them. Like I just like taking stuff apart, learning what it is. And at
So,
some point,
real quick, what year would this have been
so
around?
this would have been 2006. We're only at right now because
Okay.
I'm working at OBMX. Um, I'm trying to think, 04, 05, something like that. Mission Skate Park actually closes. The building was kind of gross and old, and some local skaters that ran a skate only small park on the other side of town that we weren't allowed into. They came to Chad and they said, "Hey, we found this warehouse right across the street from you, and we're gonna start building a skate park in it, and we can work together or we cannot, but we don't want to just start doing this without telling you." And it was an opportunity for him to partner up with some other guys and open a park called Mesh. Um, and Chad, it was phenomenal. When that place opened, it was like unmatched. The contests, the environment, the pro shop, everything. And I started helping Chad doing stuff like building wheels and helping with what they had as the beginning of kind of like a pro shop. And I transitioned to work full time there, but that also was just this weird thing where I'm working 5-6 days a week and I'm in the shit. You know what I mean? Like every day now every day is not just bicycles. Every day is BMX and ramps and all the things that come along with that. And what's crazy is at this time now we're talking about like 06, 07, kind of getting into 08. I've been working at Mesh a lot. Um, Things are kind of starting to teeter with the skate park. One of the skate owners, there's 3 owners. One of the skate owners is not really there anymore. Uh, to paint the picture, I'm working there 5 or 6 days a week, first person in, last person out, noon to 10 p.m. I'm doing all the stuff. I'm helping sign people in. I'm running the register. I'm whatever. We're fixing ramps. We're fixing toilets. We're running the shop, doing all that stuff. I'm also going to college as a business major, and I'm living at the Castleberry Trails house, which is a constant party. Um, and I moved into this Trails house, and that was real. That was really the beginning of like, this is going to be my life. I want this to be. I'm all in. All my friends do stuff. I want to be a part of this. I want to do whatever I can to be a part of this. Um, this party, I was not a partier. Moving into the party house was a decision I made, and everyone was like, "Hey, man, I get it, but you don't want to do this." I'm like, "Oh no, I want. It's gonna be great." And they're like, "I'm just telling you, just don't do it, man. Don't do it to yourself." And I moved in, and my life was interesting for a while because I'd come home and try to take a nap, and everyone would be upset. And so, come hang out, and I go, "No, fuck off, guys." And I'm laying on my bed, and I'm seeing flames come underneath my door crack, and I'm like, "Flame? What?" And I get up, and like Ricky and someone have like lit my bedroom door on fire to get my attention. It was like that type of house. And so I'm like, I just got off work. I need a nap. Like I'd sleep with earplugs in and a pillow over my head and all this shit. But that was it. Like I'm in it. BMX is my entire life at this point. When I wake up in the morning, all my friends are in the driveway. Um, there's people when I went to the trails the first time, it was a bunch of jumps in the front yard. There was a clay quarter pipe to wall ride. I could ride that. There was a legit 6-foot mini in the backyard. And this was all shit that dude Aaron's dad, for the most part, allowed to happen. And it blew my mind because my dad would not let some shit like that fly whatsoever. My grass. Um, and I think he inadvertently created this space that a lot of us were able to go and feel comfortable and be ourselves. And it created all kinds of crazy stuff, like all the band videos, everything Ricky was doing. You had people living at that house, like, so the deal was Aaron lived there as a family. And then at one point his dad decided to move on, and the house was in foreclosure. And he told Aaron, like, you guys can live there for a year without without consequence, but I'd like someone to live there so the house just doesn't sit dormant. And we went fucking nuts that year, you know, like all of us moved back into the house. It was our deal. We kind of did this whole DIY thing. Aaron was screen printing shirts in the back room of the house. Like we were printing shirts for Profile and Sparkies in the middle of this DIY BMX house. And it seemed like this is the time, you know, like we have the resources. I have all these friends that are great riders. I have all these connections in the BMX industry because I'm making all of our orders at the park and everything. And while Mesh is open still, Chad is working for Underground Distribution, which is a really weird and complex thing. Underground UGP was Ron Bonner, you know, originally. He started off, I think, in '86. That's like the legacy in Florida here, you know. Ron was the first. But for the right reasons, you know. He was screen printing number plates and making stuff in his garage. Like that's, if there was ever something to point to and go like, that's the coolest way to do it, it's that. And you can see how somebody like Ron Bonner can turn, I want to make some stuff in my garage, to my life is BMX. It's a career. And I was like, dude, I want to do that, you know? The actual Ron Bonner UGP, like they would have warehouse sales and all the local kids could come hang out. I was like, I'd start asking questions like, how do you get a job doing something like this? You know, there's a guy named Greg Lanthorn that did product development for Sparkies. And to me, I was like, this guy has the coolest job on the entire planet. He gets to come up with ideas and make them reality. And he's an older guy, older than me, you know, generation, even older than Chad, but the dude still rode his bike to work every day. And when he got a part in, he checked with a dial caliper and then he put it on his bike and he gave it a personal runaround, you know? I'm like, I want to do that. This is 100% what I want to do. And Chad DeGroot, you know, Ronnie sold UGP to a private entity at some point, and he wanted some creative freedom. And the guy that bought UGP kind of just went off the rails and turned it into something kind of weird. And then they had to reel it back at some point. Underground Distribution was going to be the answer to getting it back to BMX, and it was going to be, they wanted really cool exclusive brands. There was a guy named Ben Danaher that was running operations there, and he would come in and talk to me all the time about what we had in the case at Mesh. Why are you carrying these products? What is it that people like about these? What don't they want? And I could answer his questions because, like a nerd, I was on all the message boards. I was on Bike Guide. I was on BMX Board. I was on the Come Up message boards. I wanted to see something new all the time. It was like when I was younger, you wait till the issue of Ride or BMX Plus comes out with some photos from Interbike, and that to me was the absolute coolest thing. I loved bike parts and the mechanics of a bicycle even more than I liked riding them. And so this guy Ben was like, hey, we want somebody that's more in touch with what's going on with riders right now to be kind of a consultant for us to help rebrand Underground. And they picked up some really cool things. Like they were going to be the only US distro for BSD, which would be giant now if you were the only distributor of BSD. By the way, Grant at BSD is one of the funniest people I've ever met. That's a BMX lifer dude that deserves to have a successful BMX company. But also at the time there was Deluxe, which was a guy named Mark Noble, and they were making trail stuff. A company from Russia called Infect that was making titanium front hubs that I could send a photo of those. It seems like I was into the stuff that I feel like you're into now.
Yeah.
You want to see the next new cool thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the perfect job for me because I can tell you like right off rip, yes, these brands are going to do well, especially if you're the exclusive distributor of them. And I really liked the job. I was getting to do testing. They came to me one day and they said, hey, we want to do not necessarily a house brand, but we want a brand that we have full control over. And I said, okay. And they said, you're in school for business. Like, we want you to write a business model for a bike company, like how you would do it, because we feel like you have the right idea. And that's where this all starts. This wasn't a brainchild. This wasn't a thing that one day I was like, I'm going to do all of this, you know. It
Yeah.
started off with that, and they kind of gave me the reins. They said, write up exactly what you would do, and I wrote everything out. And they said, this looks really cool, but the only thing that is not feasible is American made frames. Just nobody does it. It's not, you can't make any money doing it. And I was like, oh well. You said business plan, make the best, coolest stuff. To me, there's a high level of respect that needs to be there for me to purchase a product. But if Taiwan's the way you want to go, I'm going to go nuts, and I'm going to utilize as much of the technology that Taiwan has as possible. If there's anything that a Taiwan frame has available over a USA made frame, especially in the early 2000s, was technology. And BMX has always been behind. Like right now, BMX is like disc brakes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, what? the mountain bikes in the early 90s that are dinosaurs and are an antiquated past had the disc brakes that we're finally putting on our BMX bikes. But you know, so underground seems really cool. I come up with the plan. Now I have to go like, okay, a name. That's, if you've ever tried to name a band or a bike company, it is the corniest experience. It's so humbling because you're like, well, like right now I see you have a Little Devil hat on, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
I talk to Derek all the time. I love Derek because Derek said something crazy to me the other day. Like, I haven't sold to a bike shop in 15 years or whatever. Like, he created something where it's an entity that's never going to go anywhere. He can survive how little or how large he wants to because he created that reputation, and he was always unwavering in changing. Little Devil was Little Devil, I think, is today what it was when it started, and that's the dream for a brand. So I'm working for underground distribution, and a big cornerstone day happens in my life, and this is when a chapter opens that I would call native 100%. I've done the business model. I've sent a bunch of stuff off to Taiwan. I've got drawings of a frame sample. I've got drawings of handlebar samples. We're planning to go to Interbike 2009. I'm going to show off these things that I've been thinking of and I've been working on. And September 14th, 2009, I'm living out the trails. I'm tired all the time working. I'm going to school. Really early in the morning, I get a phone call from my mom, which was odd. And she calls to say, hey, Dad needs some help at home. I need you to come home. And I didn't really think much about it, but I got up and I drove home, and there's an ambulance and fire trucks, and I knew something bad happened. My dad wasn't the healthiest person, and I got inside, and my mom said, you know, I'm sorry I lied to you. I just had to get you over here, but he's gone. And my dad was the most important person to me. He taught me everything that I feel like I know about respect and being a man and all this stuff. And this was not only for BMX, for anything. Like, this is a turning point where I had to kind of suck it up and become an adult and a man, and my family needed help. And I was living this life where I had moved away. I was doing my own thing. And I'm sitting at home and I'm thinking like, okay, this is really weird. My mom's trying to go get my sister from school. I'm at home. There's like a coroner trying to take my father away. I have to be there so somebody's there. And I get a call from Ben at Underground Distribution, and I ignore it. And then I get another call from Ben, and I pick it up, and he goes, "You're never going to guess, man." He's like, "The frame sample came in today." And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, all the frames you've been waiting for, they finally came in. Like, you're going to love it. You know, come in and check them out. Let's get some photos. And I was like, how odd, you know, because my parents did not like BMX. They didn't think it was a good direction for me. Me and my dad got on a really good page maybe 6 months before his passing, where I showed him CAD drawings of stuff that I had designed and paychecks from jobs with BMX names on it. And he was like, oh, okay, I get it. And that was a big deal. But I had 2 weeks from the time my dad passed to that first Interbike. And my mom's like, you got to go. You did all this work. You got to go. And so I go to Interbike 2009, which is a difficult thing to do in that headspace. But I'm really proud to show off some of this goofy stuff I've been thinking about. And I talk to as many individuals as I can about what I'm doing. And I'm DIY, and I'm a small guy coming from humble beginnings or whatever. And the the booth for Underground this year is really good because there's all these exclusive brands. You know,
Mm.
DeGroot was starting Deco, and that was also under that umbrella. So people wanted to come to this booth and see like what is actually going on. I think everyone inside BMX knew that Ronnie didn't have anything to do with UGP anymore. It was this new wave of UGP. It was corny. We were trying to kind of hone it back in and make it more core, which is, I always thought the original UGP was about as core as it gets. Um, and so I have a lot of interest. I get pre-orders from a lot of mail orders and things like that. I'm excited. Come home. Um, I decided to move back in my mom's house to help her with things. My sister's off at college at this point. Chad pulls me aside. This is weeks after my dad's passed, after the first Interbike. Chad goes, "Hey, we've got problems. We're gonna have to officially close the doors at Mesh." And so that was a big hit, but it was like, we can do one last Baco Jam. We did the Baco Jam. And the very last day that Mesh Skate Park was open was the very first day that Mr. B's, Chad's bike shop, was open.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the first employee there full time. And then we had Dave McDermott, who's the Father Sky. He does all the artwork for Swamp Fest and Trey and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I put that place together and opened that up. But, you know, Mesh closes. As soon as Mesh closes, Chad goes, "Hey, Underground Distro's done." And I said, "What do you mean? How's that possible?" And he goes, this new guy, Juan, that had taken ownership, was just not paying Taiwan and not telling us. And so, you know, we got cut off on everything. So everything that I was doing, boom, dead stop. Everything Chad was doing from Taiwan, dead stop. Chad had to immediately jump ship, figure out how to get his agents back on his side, basically start over for him, even though he had already put in a lot of work. All those exclusive brands jumped ship and immediately found other distros. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
kind of shit out of luck. I'm working at Chad's bike shop again. And I knew everyone in the industry that I had known, and I knew all these great riders. And one day, this guy, Ben Danahar, that ran Underground, he also helped do a lot of stuff for IMG Distro in England.
Mm.
He'd been around the block. He calls and he says, "You know, man, just because Underground's done doesn't mean that should be done." He's like, "I think you should grab it and it should be your thing, and I think you should do it." And he's like, "If you want help, I know people that can help finance it, but these are guys that have helped other small brands and they're going to want to do Taiwan." And he's like, "I don't think that's the route you should go. I think you should 100% do exactly the way that you want to do it." And 2010, 2011, I start calling all the manufacturers that I respect, you know, S&M, Standard, FBM, Solid. At the time, Quaman was doing a bunch of manufacturing. They were walking around Interbike with sheets for frame pricing, sprockets, anything welded. And I called everyone in a specific order. I don't know why I decided Solid I would put at the bottom of the list. They seem like a smaller shop. It seemed like it'd be less likely for them to be able to or to want to help me. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I was riding a Solid Killing Machine. It was my favorite frame ever. It was cool geometry. As somebody that likes bikes, there's all these weird flat plates and gussets, and there's so much craftsmanship and work that went into one of these frames. I call Solid one day, and Aaron Huff picks up the phone. I don't know what I think Solid is, but it's just a warehouse, you know, with a couple of guys in it.
Yeah.
He picks up the phone, and I explain who I am and what I'm trying to do, and he goes, "Yeah, I was in your Interbike booth, and you showed me all the stuff you're doing with the frame." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I think what you're doing is pretty cool. What are you trying to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to start a bike company, and I didn't want it to be Taiwan. I want to do USA." And he goes, "Okay, like, so what do you want to know from me?" And I said, "Well, you're the only one that even first answered the phone. All these other companies were willing to kind of do something, but I'm nobody. They don't know who the fuck I am. So S&M's like, we have time. We can do some handlebars for you, but frame production, I don't, you know, Standard never got back to me. FBM was dwindling. the Quartz guys were doing different things, but it ended up where I was like, if Solid is going to make frames for me, that inadvertently was my first choice because I was riding a Solid. I respected that company so much. Um, and Aaron, Aaron, I say if there's two people that really, really believed in native and pushed me to do this, it was Ben Danahart and Aaron Huff at Solid, because he was gracious enough to understand that I was some young BMX guy trying to start a brand. And he was really gracious with pricing for samples and for helping me out with drawings and all these things that I didn't understand I needed and everything. And so I ordered like, I don't know, 7 or 8 solid made samples. I didn't really say a lot to people. They came in and I just kind of handed them out to Castleberry Trails locals. I was like, I have, anyone that wasn't already glued and glommed onto a BMX company or whatever. And with Solid, I did these prototypes that I ended up loving. We changed very little about the prototypes other than adding a gusset for some sort of physical branding. We did handlebars that were straight gauge. I used to bend handlebars all the time. I didn't want a light handlebar. I wanted a straight gauge USA made bar. Huff made them at Solid. They got sent here. A friend of ours, Dan Perez, welded buffalo nickel bar ends on all the handlebars. I did 2 heights, 2 widths. I had seen Dave McDermott do it before for fun, and I'd seen Clint Reynolds do it on his bike, but I'd never seen it as a production thing. And so that was also another DIY. Like, that was something we could be physically involved with. Dan was a fabricator, but he wasn't making handlebars. He welded the nickels on. We ended up doing a big production in 2012 where we did the first frame was called the Trend Kill. Credence wasn't doing what it's doing right now. FBM was kind of on its way out. The traditional BMX frame wasn't available in the masses, and that was what I wanted. And the Trend Kill was kind of a poke at that, kill the trend.
Yeah.
The Great Southern Trend Kill is a Pantera song, basically about, fuck the scene and all these things, be yourself. We did a ton of soft goods. I did, hats, koozies, stickers, anything you could think of. And all of it was as DIY as possible. The dude, Aaron, that his dad owned the Trails House, he started young in high school with a screen printing shop called GGSB. And so anything that's out there in the world that's a native product, t-shirt, a sticker, all of our packaging, anything, Aaron printed by hand. So if you have a box to an old native frame or whatever, it's something that got put on a screen printing press and screen printed by hand. We took every product photo. We did every video. We did, the leather work was something I'll talk about here in a second, but we wanted to be as in control as possible. And Aaron having a print shop was insane because it made it to where I could literally right now, I could be like, Brent, let's come up with an idea for a t-shirt. And tonight they'd be printed and sent to you. And so for that reason, we printed as many t-shirts and hats and as many goofy fucking things as we could think of. And that was absolutely awesome. It helped kind of like, I was selling frames, t-shirts and hats was a way for people to be involved without having to spend $400, And when you do something cool, people inherently want to support it. I remember when I put it out there, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this bike company. I'm going to make things this way. And the day that the website launched, I'd worked really hard on it. The day the website launched, the day the store launched, this dude, Kyle Keck, that was a local digger at Caddy, placed an order for a frame and handlebars. The first 5 minutes, the site was up. And I was like, okay, all right. And that was because of me traveling up and down the East Coast and meeting people that were traveling. And he was like, oh, I'm sure it was James is a cool guy. Let's see what's going on. And the first run of frames, all like they sold out quickly. And they were frames that had no paint, no clear coat. They came in a box raw. I think the deal was like I was able to order like something crazy like 30 frames with clear coat or 31 frames without clear coat. And I was like, give me as many frames as I can get, Um, with that said, for me to start off guns blazing, and even though it's only like, I don't know, 30 frames or something in that first run, 40 frames, for them to sell and nobody knew who I was, and it wasn't the marketing of the stickers, it wasn't the marketing of the frame, it wasn't the marketing of the team, it was what it was, a really sick American frame built by a really refutable company with some geometry that I liked, and it had a look where it looked like a trails frame, but it would take a beating. We had this dude Bryce Toole that was riding for Madeira at the time, and he would obliterate bikes. He was very smooth, but he would just do huge shit, and he'd twist crank arms, and he would break things like that. And that was kind of the way things were with that group of people in Central Florida. The level of riding was insane. You had some of the best trail riders, you had some of the best street riders, you had some of the best park riders. Like we talked about earlier, Dave Mahoney with the Nowhere crew is somebody that I went to first grade with all the way through high school. So I knew people like him, and a lot of people started off racing. Same with Ricky and Aaron and all these guys. They were racers. And then Ricky got into park, and I remember we were in high school and he went to like a backyard jam. What's the one that used to happen in Canada every year?
Metro?
Metro. Ricky was in high school and his dad entered him in Metro Jam Pro.
Whoa.
And he drove from Florida to Metro Jam and entered. I'm like, these are my friends in high school, And then like living at the trails, you have people like Mark Mulville, who's just a regular. He was from the other side of the state, Tampa, and he moved to Central Florida to ride. So, like at one house, you've got the guy Aaron that essentially owns the place. You had Ricky Bates doing all the band stuff. You had Greg Smee was a guy that rode for Sabrosa for some years. He had a website called Here for Kicks. He was doing his own thing. There were like all these things happening on this one property and all these people. Why wouldn't you really want to go ham and use all of your resources to start something? And this is something interesting about the Central Florida scene at this time. And I made a list, right? There's so much going on in Florida and in the Central Florida scene. And I'm trying to start this brand. And in it, we've got, an area where the original UGP and Sparky's was. And back then they did UGP and they did Federal and they did a bunch of other really cool brands. And then he really honed it in and decided this is what Sparky's is going to be. And so while I'm starting my small brand, in the same town, you have Shadow, Sabrosa, Rant, Mutiny, Bone Death, Tempered, Sputnik, Band BMX, Chad starting Deco. We have Profile right up the street. And then we also have things like Fiend. And all these brands are already established by people like, Ron setting the ground rules for these. Like, I can be a successful BMX business owner and then share with Sabrosa. And I don't remember who was doing all the Mutiny stuff back then, but like there was a person, Sean Burns with Bone Death, Tempered, Ricky with Band. Sputnik was really big at one time. And all of these companies, the riders for these companies were in Central Florida constantly. So they were at the trails, they were at the local skate park. It was a battleground. People were like, this is mine. This is my friend. He's my rider. He rides for us. Don't, or somebody would come to town and it was like you had to hang with the right people or things were weird because then so-and-so would have a job at this company or so-and-so rode for this company and things were going to get weird. But something that's really cool is that as a BMXer, as somebody that likes making things, as somebody that thinks things are cool, Aaron at GGSB Screen Printing, we printed so much soft goods for Profile, and I made a ton of custom seats for Profile over the years. And as a BMXer that grew up wanting a Profile 3-piece crank, to find out that we're like making some of the only stuff that Profile doesn't make for them, and we're BMX riders. And I went on this whole thing that people, I think I even misrepresented how I felt back in the day. I was very pro buy USA, buy American made products. And I can see where that looks now and could have looked ignorant then. I probably need to be better at choosing words. My initial intent with that is everyone involved in American BMX companies at that time was some guy like you or me that like, or some guy like me that just had a normal day job. He loved BMX, and he had to use a normal day job to supplement his, um, love of this company or brand or whatever that he's doing. And I had jobs, from there, from kind of at that point on, I spent a couple of years just working at bars and traveling, and doing the native thing. I'd print with Aaron at the screen printing shop, sporadically. I had a workspace there where I was doing leather, and we were jamming music. Things were changing a little bit. I would do native when I could afford to. At that point, we had also done a street frame for Billy Richardson from the band crew called the Shotgunner, and it was just this really wild, stiff BMX frame. I don't actually have a Shotgunner anymore, which is kind of sad. I went through this period of just cleaning and purging, and I got rid of a lot of stuff. I got it to people that really cared for it. I have a friend, Justin Falco, that has a really large native BMX collection of stuff, but I then, I want to say this was maybe 2017, 2018, I got an opportunity to work for Team Payne skate parks, which is a big thing in Central Florida. They build parks all around the world. And there's this guy, Tim Payne, and he owns the company. And he's famous because he built the Animal Chin ramp.
Oh.
He on paper, he was the first person to ever build a spine. He built all of these NSA vert ramps back in the day for all the contests that made the Bones Brigade famous, and Tony Hawk, who he is. And he built ramps, but he was from Florida, and he started out building crappy ramps in backyards, and he could figure out a transition. And then it transitioned into he's building all the professional ramps. But Florida was where he was from, and I started working there. There's a very anti-BMX connotation with this company because in the state of Florida, at the time, like I'm 16, 17. I can't go to any other park without a waiver signed by my parents, and it sucked. And it was absolute garbage. Every park had a fence. Every park cost money. A lot of the parks that Tim were building were like that. And so there was this underlying, Team Payne doesn't like BMX thing, when really it was a state of Florida having issues with not understanding what skate parks are, what they're for. I know now, not then, but I know now that a lot of the people, even still, that run the state of Florida, they're so old that when they were a kid, skateboarding wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
They don't even have a friend that did it. They can't even kind of connect with it. Now we're in an era where there's a lot of free open skate parks bikes are allowed into. But I start working for Team Payne, and I'm thinking like this is going to be really good. I've known Tim a long time. His brother Eric. So Team Payne, Tim's brother Eric is the singer and guitar player for a big metal band called Intoxicated, and he's like also does all kind of stage tech stuff. He's the stage tech for the band the band Obituary. He travels the world with them. Not what you'd expect, right? But this guy lived at the Trails house with us as well. And so the brother of the guy that everyone said hates BMX is living at this crazy BMX house with us. And so what I did at Team Payne a long time ago, I helped them rebuild a website, and I did a lot of graphic design for them. And we just kind of got of a guy that they would call every now and then when they needed help. And one day I was working at bars. I had a blown out knee. I had a knee brace on. I could barely walk. Tim sees me one day and he's like, "What's wrong with your leg?" So my knee's blown out. I do this. This is all I can do. And he goes, "Man, just come into the office. Like, we can find something for you to do." So without even having something for me to do, he goes, "Let me get you out of this situation." I come into the office and he goes, "Here's a plethora of things that we need to work on." And basically I became an assistant project manager for building skate parks, and I became the marketing director for their company. And so what I would do is whatever city, Eustis, Florida, random city, they have a piece of land, they want to do a skate park. They put out, the thing saying, "Hey, we're building a skate park." All the skate park companies send out a RFQ, a request for qualifications. All the skate park companies that want to bid send in their qualifications. Here's a pamphlet explaining who we are and what we do. And then they go through a bid process. And once a company gets awarded a project, then I go in and I go, whatever city it is, you know, my job would be to get with every local skate shop, every local bike shop, get on Facebook, find anyone that's involved in the scene with BMX or skating. Previous to my employment, it was just skating. So what I was doing is I was going, hey, you know, these BMXers don't know these meetings are happening. And so for years, I was digging even more hard in, because skate scene, not very hard to find in any city. BMX scene, sometimes a little hard to find in small cities. So I really dug around and I really, really pushed and tried to get as many BMXers to these city meetings as possible, because the city, that's where the city is going to understand. And you're trying to convince them, like, why does the city want to spend $1 million on a skate park when they've got a basketball court over there that they see people on all day? And also, you know, you guys already ruined all the ledges at City Hall. Why are we going to reward bad behavior? And so I would have to go in as like almost a salesman, you know, and explain to a city how important this is. I was also explaining from the point of view of somebody who grew up at a skate park. You know what I mean? Every day. It was what we did. It was how I learned how to socialize. It was how I learned how to be like committed to something. Skate park is such a great thing. And as somebody that works for a skate park company, it seems ingenuine to say things like that, but that's just what it is. And so I would go and I would present an initial design based on how much space and how much budget you'd have. And I'd get to do these really cool public input meetings with the public. And I would make these really detailed questionnaires about the design. What do you like about this? What don't you like? And we would go back. I mean, I would talk to everyone. I'd run through everything. And we'd go back and we'd refine a design, and then we'd come back to another meeting and show these kids that have nothing, we're going to build this. And to see a kid's jaw drop, like, no way. And they do that. No way. It'll never happen. I've been here my whole life. And then you get to go to a skate park grand opening. You know, I go out and check on the guys building the park throughout the process and get photos and everything. But you go to a grand opening and you see the city get to react to the first time, like understand how, like to 100 kids, this is going to be home. And the thing is, when a city builds a skate park, it's not just for those kids that currently ride BMX and skate. It's all these kids that are going to come out of the neighborhood to check it out that wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
And so I worked for this company, and while I worked there, I helped design and build and run the entire process through cities that I've been around my entire life that had nothing. And I got to go to a city meeting and see these wide-eyed kids like, please help us. Like, my dad has to drive me 45 miles to go anywhere to skate. Please help us. And to show them what could happen and see them hesitantly excited, like, okay, we'd really like to see it happen. And then you go to them, you see these kids interact with this stuff the first time, and you're like, the amount of money that I got paid or my bills or whatever, like, who fucking cares? Because this right here is, I did something. With Native, I felt like I helped provide people the tools they needed to ride their bikes. Like, we made really good products, really cool products, but I don't feel like I gave back. You know what I mean? I charged people money for the things that I did. It was a business. Working for the skate park, I had a sense of pride in giving these communities something that I didn't. The city that I live in, Winter Park, is a very ritzy city. I live in a small house out on the edge. No skate park in Winter Park. I've been here my whole life. You know, it's Orlando specifically is a struggle. They don't get it. They don't care. They don't want a skate park. We were talking about a skate park has to compete with Disney in terms of trying to bring people to Orlando. So when you go to a small city and you say, this is going to bring new people to come check out the city, and it always does, they're like, what's 100 people coming to the skate park to us, you know? So we kind of get dogged out in that. But I was really, really happy with getting to do everything that I did with that company. And Central Florida BMX shit on me so hard for working for that company. They were like, oh, you're bad for BMX. This isn't good. Like, Tim Payne personally rallied in Tallahassee, and he went a bunch of times and created a new legislature, Florida Statute 316.0085. In 2017, Tim made this a thing. Every skate park that is not privately owned in the state of Florida can post a sign and waive all liability, meaning no insurance required. It's a ride at your own risk. This also meant that the 16-year-old kid that could hitch a ride with his 18-year-old friend to the park didn't have to have a waiver signed. He didn't have to have his mom come. This opened up a whole new level of freedom for everyone, but it also proved that if you don't have to have insurance at a park, if you don't have to have this and that, you don't need a fence and you don't need an employee. These are self-governing, just like basketball courts. And a couple of cities kind of let it happen. And you go, boom, now you have it. Now, the Lake Mary skate park that I used to be strictly no bikes and then turned into letting bikes in a couple nights a week for whatever, $10, we would still go because it was cool. Now there's no fence at all. No one works there. I can drive over to that skate park right now and ride. And you take things like that for granted because when I was 17 years old, we would hop the fence and the cops would show up and people would get handcuffed. It was a really big deal. Like, you're a criminal for trying to ride the skate park. And this legislature that he pushed for, it kind of helped skateboarding, but it mostly helped BMX because when the fence goes down, then there's no more rules. And there are still a handful of skate parks in Florida that don't allow bikes. And that's nothing to do with Team Pain and 100% with the cities and their inability to regulate the parks as they are with rules. Sometimes parks are built in the back of a facility where it's hands off, no one can see it. That's like where it's prime time for like troublemakers and kids that want to tag or whatever. I think everyone's done that where they go to a skate park and you run into like a group of people that are there that they also want to have fun and do everything, but you recognize like if they do their thing, it's going to like ruin the skate park and it's going to ruin your ability to do your thing. So you get protective over things. And it's full circle because very recently the city of Castleberry cut the ribbon on a brand new skate park. And I'm sure that you've seen a lot of footage from this. I did get to go to the grand opening. I quietly walked around with sunglasses on and didn't really talk to many people, but I worked on that specific project for about 5 years. I went to every city meeting. I did all of the city council meetings. I did all of the public input meetings. And when I got to walk around that spot, after years of not talking to anyone, I had a huge smile on my face because I'm like, now all these kids that don't have a place to like, it's in a not great neighborhood in Castleberry. It's a huge trailer park, low income area. And all these kids are going to go to the skate park now and find a hobby. And this park is 40,000 square feet.
Jeez.
I don't know what free parks look like where you're from, but Orlando is like free parks are about 10,000 square feet if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So across the street from the Castleberry Park is a gigantic Velo Solutions pump track. And this skate park, even at grand opening with hundreds of people there, there's room for people to ride. People are taking runs. There's time. It was built right. And even though people were huffed and puffed about it'll never happen or why is it taking so long, like it's walking distance from the Castleberry trails where we were like, the city hated us because we had ramps in the backyard and we were always like, we weren't raising hell anywhere but our own yard, you know? And so it was cool to somehow be a part of that, getting that park, seeing it open. I didn't want any recognition from anyone. I didn't want to thank you or anything. I personally got to see kids I've never seen in my life that don't know who I am. And they're just thrilled that the park is there. And for me, that's cool. I see all kinds of other people from the Florida scene that I don't necessarily want to communicate with anymore. They're also in the park smiling. So I don't want a thank you or a pat on the back. I never did it for any of that stuff. But to go there and see this thing and go, okay, I feel like I did something. I left a mark. Even if my name's not on this, I feel like I worked at a job. Everyone has to have a job. You have to pay your bills. Why not try to do something to help people? That was my way of helping people. Native never really helped anyone except for the people that I gave free bikes to. It surely didn't make me money, and it soured my view on business and all these things. But while I'm working at Team Pain 2020, there's a brand new park that's open. I went to take some photos. I had also been talking to Mike at Dutch Bikes. It had been some years since we had done frames. I'm getting emails all the time from people going, hey man, I have this Trendkill frame. I've been riding it for 8 years. Like, I don't want to take it apart, but after 8 years, I'm getting kind of nervous. Like, you should make more frames. And well, Aaron from Solid had decided to fold on bicycle manufacturing, which I'm sure he held out like everyone as long as he could, but no more Solid. And that's kind of what I had to tell people. I was like, I think for this story to continue, I have to find the right manufacturer. And Solid, people had different opinions about Solid back in the day, because Colt did the thing where they had FBM make some frames and Solid make some frames, and I thought that was really fucking cool because it was a new brand, and they were like, how can I make this as rider as possible? And Solid did, the word is great. Like, they made such solid products. Aaron Huff did me such a solid and helped me like create this idea that I had in my head that I wanted to do. And I had been following Mike with Dutch for a while. He was doing one-offs for himself and his friends. He had like his trail bike in 2017 or something was a belt drive with a disc brake. And I'm like, belt drive. I'm like emailing him. I'm like, what is, and he's like, yeah, I got to do the math for the gearing. And I put the belt on the chainstay and then weld the frame up. And then from there, he did this weird seat stay with a coupler and a bolt that you could undo to get the belt out if you need to change it. And he was making his own custom hubs and all this stuff. And I was like, God, I'm like, this is, you get little blurbs of this kind of stuff where people are doing these crazy things. Like, there's a guy right now that does small batch BMX, and he does these crazy CNC brakes with
Mark Johnson.
Yes. And I followed his project for years until the brakes were available, and immediately I'm like, I don't care what they cost. Give me a set. I don't ride my bike on the regular, but I was like, that is something where I have to purchase that. Some guy spent that much time to make brakes. For me, all my friends rode brakeless. For me, I only wanted to look at the cool brake stuff. I wanted to look at pedals. I wanted to look at hubs. I wanted to look at everything that had moving intricate parts. There's also the guy that's doing hydraulic gyro, and he's doing like some sort of weird new coaster brake hub and all.
Yeah, it
just freaks me out, because why is it that it's a guy in his garage creating the newest cool shit for BMX instead of like I know you ride for Alien Nation. That I was excited, like, okay, a company that makes stuff is going to focus on brakes again. What a foreign concept, you know, like the hubs aren't round. They have faceted sides. They look different.
It's funny you bring that up because all of that is from me.
Well, but it's because you're detail oriented, and you're going, hey, like, I'm with a company that will listen and has the means. Not everybody likes brakes,
right?
But if you realize that that's a niche market, and you make a really nice set of brakes, everyone's going to buy the damn brakes. You know, why half-ass it and make let's make a crappy set that you can throw on your bike. They're really easy to work on. Like, no, I'm the guy that I want the sealed bearings, and I want it to be rebuildable, and I want all the bells and whistles, and I want as much modulation, and I want as much adjustment as possible. So when I started talking to Mike, it was 2020, and I said, a lot of people contact me about wanting frames. I see that you're doing stuff with both Mutiny and Terrible One. Your bikes are beautiful. Bare minimum, I'd at least like to get a 2020 trend kill just for myself, because I never kept stuff. I always rode everyone's shit. Like I have some reference stuff here that I can go through. Like, this was a shotgun sample, and look at how tiny the dropouts came out on it. Like, Billy and a bunch of people rode this. This was supposed to be a monster street frame, you know, and this was a no-go pretty early on. It also had welded chainstay mounts. That was my thing. I really like chainstay. And so, you know, that was my bike for a couple of years, as somebody's dented up shotgun prototype. I didn't find it necessary for me to have a brand new frame, because Trey posted something recently about there's a difference between a BMXer and a bike rider, something like that. You know what I mean? I don't really know what all that means or care, but if there has to be a definitive difference, I have to come on here and say that, like, currently in my life right now, I'm a poser that 18-year-old BMX James would think was lame, you know? Like, I have a full-time job. I ride my bike every now and then. I'm disconnected from what's going on. I'm like kind of the old man where I'm like, well, if it's not on props, I got to search the internet for it. Like, I loved when a magazine came in and I got to physically hold it. And So I can do the thing, and I can be the old man yelling at the sky, wondering why BMX isn't how I wanted it to be. Or I can just say, BMX is just a thing. It's not, BMX is like basketball or football. Like, how many people love football, but they don't play football? And so I don't know why there needs to be all this pressure on what BMX is and what it needs to be, and that it owes somebody or that somebody owes it something. I feel lucky that I got to exist on the same plane as BMX. I tried to do as many things for BMX as I could. I got a lot of things out of BMX, but now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like, what a weird thing. Like, why would I even do that? I liked BMX. Why would I go way out of my way to interject myself into that world? And
Mm.
if there's any advice I could give to young people, because I lived in a city where all these brands that became bigger brands are, and all the young kids have all this stuff on their bikes, you know, and they're going, well, I'm a Shadow guy. Well, I'm a Sabrosa guy. Well, I go to Mr. B, so I'm a Deco guy. You know, I ride this stuff. Or a lot of times it's like, well, I'm an adult, so I have a job, so I bought the standard that I wanted, and I have profile hubs or whatever, you know. And to me, that was always the like, not having to be beholden to a logo or anything was freeing to me, you know. I had my own brand, we did frames, but I was able to make connections with the right people, people that I thought were cool. And so, like a drag racing team, Native Bikes was co-sponsored by a lot of people. Bryce Toole was on the Madeira Pro team. So we did a thing where, you know, I talked to Matt and I said, I want everyone on our team to have access to the best shit. Can we do some sort of co-sponsor thing? And so everyone that was on the Native team, and the Native team was people you've never heard of, you know, like Florida locals and stuff. Maybe people like this guy Ryan Herbach, that
Mm.
he was helping Trey build jumps. He used to ride for this sick company called Endemic. This guy Joe Schiavi ran a small company, so he knew the deal. You had people like this guy Joey Waristi, that he was he was like the main guy at Castleberry. And unfortunately, people knew Castleberry, but people didn't know Joey, who was the main guy that dug and designed everything. They didn't really know that Mike Cottle was one of the main people out there, and nobody knew Aaron. It was Aaron's house, you know. He grew up in it, and no one knew this guy. And you know, for someone like Aaron, he didn't really care. It's his house. People always showed up, and they're like, "Oh, Joey's trails," you know. Aaron never got the recognition, but one day, local exposure tour is happening in Florida, and a Monster Energy tour bus pulls up to the end of the driveway, and Dave Mira gets out, and he's like, "Hey, man, where can I park the rig so we can come ride?" You know, and Aaron's like, "What the fuck?" You know, and so they show up, and Mira's kind of looking around, and he walks up to a couple people, and he goes, "Hey, who lives here?" And that's funny because no one ever did that, but Dave Mira, like the guy that can show up and do whatever he wants anywhere. He wants to show up and he wants to ask whose place this is so that he can thank them for letting everyone show up. And then his next question is like, all right, well, I haven't ridden jumps in a long ass time. And he goes, so this is your house. I'm going to follow you. And Aaron's like, what? He's like, yeah, I got to follow a local, you know? And so there's a lot of good times. There's a lot of weird times. Where my BMX story kind of ends is, we did the pre-order. I decided to do bikes with Mike. He said, hey, I have a space between two orders and I can do roughly 25 frames for you. That's the amount of time and energy I can give you. I'd love to help you. The sample looked beautiful. We did some really cool aesthetic things. Built-in chain tensioners, CNC dropouts, bottom brackets, head tubes, all this really cool stuff. And I did it in a way where I was like, I'm not really trying to make any money off of this. I'm not trying to really jump back into it. I told everyone, hey, I'm going to do this as a pre-sale. If you really do want a frame, I'm doing this for you guys. You know, I'm not going to make extras and try to sell them on a website or anything. This is what it's going to be. And I did it, and about 25 people reached out, and somehow half of those guys have frames just sitting on a mantle. You know what I mean? Like they didn't even put them together, which is kind of flattering, but kind of odd. And I still have people send me links like, hey man, just so you know, it's a link to an eBay auction to a clapped out native frame that's rusty and it's $500. Or the leather seats that I was doing, I'll see somebody with a seat on eBay or at an auction or something, and it's 2 or 3 times what I charged for it originally, and it looks like their dog chewed on it. So at that time, I'm feeling fulfilled with Native. I'm not super interested in wanting to continue to pursue it as a big bike company, but I'm in the direction of skate parks and all that. I go to this brand new skate park that's built. It's still a closed construction site, and I'm essentially supposed to go in there to let a bunch of skaters in to film so we can film a promo video. And Tim's like, well, bring your bike, ride the park, tell me what the bowl's like. Okay, whatever. I get in there, I put my camera back down. I guess I dropped into the bowl and I hit a patch of dust. And I always wear a full cut helmet. I had sunglasses on, and I just went face first into a transition. Like I hit a patch of dust and my bars turned, and I broke my cheekbone and my eye socket out really bad, and my glasses broke and pretty much just filleted my eyebrow. And I was happy that my teeth were still there, but as I stood up to try to get out of the bowl, I recognized that my shoulder wasn't right. I had a full AC separation all the way down to my right shoulder. I got out of the bowl. I couldn't stop throwing up for an hour. I'm over an hour away from home. I do luckily have a friend with me. He drives me back home. I'm in the ER for a day. But then this is kind of like, okay, like I'm for fun playing music a lot more than I was previously. I'm not riding as much. At the time, I was doing a lot of powerlifting to try to regenerate the bullshit that was inside my knees. And I was like, man, I went to ride BMX for like 1 hour. It was going to be the 1 hour this month I rode BMX, and it made it to where I can't do any of these other activities. I had to draw a line in the sand as a rider. I was not ever good at riding. I did my best to participate. I loved riding my bike. I loved being part of the crew. Ricky was generous enough to put clips of me riding in some of these band videos. I think, just out of, hey, you're our buddy, I'll put a fucking disaster on a ledge clip in or whatever. But I was like, I never did anything with the riding aspect of BMX. I love it. I still have a bike. I still have one of Mike's Dutch frames put together. It has Matt Copeland's signature profile cat eye hubs on it. I love the technology. I look at it. I'll cruise it around every now and then. But I had to make a really, really tough decision to not do the thing that I'd loved for a really long time for the better of my physical and mental health. I was working for the skate park company, and things were happening in Central Florida, and there was a lot of bureaucracy, and I decided to just part ways with the BMX scene. I didn't like go out with a bang or anything. I was just like, I'm over this. Issues with personalities between friends clashing, all kinds of things. Like, we were getting older. I couldn't ride BMX anymore, so it made me physically upset and sad to go to events. It made me depressed because I'm like, even though this is a BMX event that I wouldn't even ride, I'm at one of Dave Brumlow's FL BMX contest series stops. Everyone was there. Dave Brumlow was one of the only people still trying to keep a scene together for any kind of competition level stuff, because once the indoor wood parks went away, the contest went away, because you were excited for the Baco Jam, or you're excited for the Spot Jam, or you're excited for the contests at Clearwater Skate Park or whatever. And Dave Brumlow took the opportunity to try to do these organized contests. And I know that there's a lot of opinions on the Olympics or contests or whatever, but like, if I'm 12, 13 years old and I have my first BMX bike and I'm excited like I was, and I show my parents Dew Tour, they go, oh, that's cool, it's on TV. Or Olympics, especially, that was a big selling point with these cities that don't understand skate parks. I'm like, this isn't some hobby anymore. Like, this is an Olympic sport. You cannot turn a blind eye anymore. And BMX was an Olympic sport before skateboarding even. So if you want to give the credit to skateboarding, here we are. BMX had done this before, and the cities would go, well, we had no idea. Well, now you do. And so when people have a view on like the Olympics being bad or organized competition being bad. I don't think that is at all, because that was when I'm 13, my parents are going to let me go to the FLBMX contest series. They're going to let me see riders. They're going to let me see the park. They're going to let me interact with other riders. I'm going to get that experience. I'm 13 and my parents know what Swamp Fest is. Fuck no. You know what I mean? And so for someone to have an opinion on this is what's good for BMX and this is what's not good for BMX, it's all perspective, because Swamp Fest has a crowd and Olympics has a crowd, but if both of them are happening, they're both getting people to see BMX. And my biggest advice, the one thing takeaway from Native and my whole story is that if you like BMX and you like riding your bike, let that be what it is. Love your bike, love riding your bike. If you're young and you want to get a sponsor so you can have cool bike parts, you're better off get a part-time job, make BMX a thing that you enjoy, use that part-time job money to buy whatever bike parts you want. Don't be, tethered to one thing or another, because for a sport that has such a connotation of freestyle, there's way too many rules. And they're not written rules. They're not, it's not like basketball where every basketball court's the same. The rules are the same everywhere. Every scene you go to, every city, basketball is played the same way. People might have different style, but what's crazy is in Central Florida, we have all these parks and they're different from each other, because this little city wanted mostly transition and this little city wanted street. And the guys that ride the transition park are really good at transition, and you have all these things, but how do you make a set of rules that applies to a BMX racer and a freestyle rider and a street rider and it's all somehow BMX, but like I went to a jam yesterday at a local small skate park. These guys, 441 and Mush Crew, put on a jam. I'd never seen any of these kids in my life except for the couple of guys throwing the jam. To me, I'm looking at their bikes and I'm like, I've been gone so long. I'm like, where do these kids make these decisions? Like, what is it? What made them want to buy that bike or whatever? I'm thinking, because the come up isn't around. I don't, I'm like, where do you look now these days? Because for me, it was like you had the dance comp and the ride BMX and the videos. And then at some point you didn't have to look anywhere. You just went to the come up every day and everything was there. So I'm like, it's probably harder than it was for me to be connected with this stuff, but these kids still want to do it. And there are people in Central Florida and probably in every city that are well known, and that's your window to a local scene. I think a lot of people think that they know what the Central Florida scene is based on something that they've seen having to do with Chad DeGroot or Trey Jones. And unfortunately, their windows into the scene are not the real deal. There's not that they're not the real deal, but there's a lot more than just that going on. So I go to this jam yesterday and I don't know anyone. It's wild. There's a whole group of people that have picked it up and are doing it, and I don't even know them. Back in the day, if I saw anyone riding a BMX bike that I didn't know, I was like, oh my God, who is that? I have to run over and figure out who they are. Like, this is my people. And I think it's fucking cool. But I will also say that there are people in the scene that complain about the scene. There's things need to be this way, or we need to support, or this or that. And then but then I go to this jam and it's like that crew. There's not all the other crews at this crew's jam. And then when the next crew throws a jam, you get to that jam and it's just that crew hanging out. Like, it's very weird. There's a division. And now, Sparky's is not in Central Florida anymore, I don't believe. I think that they've done a bunch of stuff with Source.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big level of contention there for a long time where Chad DeGroot runs a bike shop that's very close to Sparky's. Sparky's is not a retailer. Sparky's fought really hard to tell Chad, like, hey, we want to set up a side of this bike shop that's all of our stuff. We will set it all up. Once a month, we'll come by. We'll inventory everything. Everything you've sold, we'll just write you a check for your cut or whatever. Like, it was handed to him on a silver platter. And he didn't want Sparky's to get in the way of his ability to sell deco and profile and all these things. And he was like, nah, I'll carry it because the local kids like it, but I'm not going to make my business about your business. And I don't know why, because Ronnie really was like, here it is. Like, you don't have to pay for anything until it's sold. And it created a lot of, contest and a lot of like, I'm a Mr. B's guy, or I'm not, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. And then Ronnie opened a small shop, Juvie Hall. And then it created this big separation between the two of them. At this point, this is me looking from an outsider perspective. I don't really know what's going on. I know that Chad moved to a new location and then stopped carrying Sparky's stuff altogether. And now Sparky's is no longer in Longwood. And so there was always these fights and a big thing in BMX that I noticed from my generation, the people that I looked up to, people that run things like S&M and there are big brands that exist right now, right? And let's say there's only 10 slices of the pie. Those guys with their 10 slices, they don't want to give away any of those other slices. Mm-hmm. So without coming out and saying it, there's a lot of gatekeeping in the BMX industry, and they've figured it out, for good reason. Like, BMX has come a long way in 20 years, and it's because of the hard work that these BMX company owners have put in. But they've got it on cruise control right now. They know when they want to make a new frame, who to hit up. They send dimensions. It's all set in place. And if somebody new shows up, now we've got a problem, because it's what do we compete with this? Or do we try to put this out of business? Or do we try to add it under our umbrella? And so a big thing for me is, I'm working at Chad's BMX shop. I'm starting a bike brand. He's also starting a bike brand. You can hang a native frame up in the corner of the bike shop. That's fine. But, the wall space, it's Ronnie's companies competing and all the underground distribution companies competing. And then Chad wants as much deco represented as possible. And I'm trying to do my little thing. And everyone that comes through the door is a fan of one of these brands. And to do good business, you have to cater to what they want, instead of going, no, you don't want that. You should buy my thing, And I was pretty unbiased in it, because I knew that all of the brands that Ronnie produced and Chad's thing, Deco, they very much catered to broad audiences. Like, there were a lot of different people that could like what they were doing, but you had to kind of be like a mid-school guy to like any of the native stuff. So I didn't feel like it was a competition, or I didn't feel like we were on the same level or playing field at all. But like anything, native did get kind of popular in the beginning, and people were rocking it. And so I've known Ron Bonner a long time, and he's like, hey, let's catch up. Let's get lunch or something, and we talk, and he introduces me to the idea of, we could potentially help you out. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And he's like, well, we distribute brands. There's a lot we can do to help you financially, but we'd want to distribute. If you're open to that, there's a lot we could do to help you. And I kind of just simply said, I think Taiwan negates the entire idea of what I'm trying to do. No offense, And I think I remember Ronnie being pretty respectful about that. Just the fact that the guy that started UGP hit me up, a kid that was a fan of UGP, to talk business. I was like, holy shit. That means at least I did something to where he recognized, like, oh, that's cool. This guy's making this stuff in his garage. Ultimately, it wasn't what I wanted it to be. I still needed Native to be a core brand that me, a BMXer that traveled all the time, was running. But, I do remember a time where I was developing some products. I had a closed dropout fork that we had been working on, and I wanted it American made. Solid was working on it. There's an old brand from the 90s, early 2000s called GAC. Mm-hmm. This guy, John GAC, ran a company, and he was close in Sacramento to Aaron. And so he was prototyping our dropouts and steer tubes and stuff for these forks. I wanted them to be not a fixed offset. We could change the offset. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this fork for like maybe a year, and I had 2 prototypes that were fixed offset. I hadn't figured out this how I was going to make the offset different yet. And then I go to Interbike one year, and Sparky's Shadow has a fork. I don't remember what it was called, but it was the idea that I had in my head, but way better. And I'm like, okay, well, as a new brand, like I can't do this now, or it's going to be a bad look. But I had a bunch of people hitting me up, like the fans of Native were big fans. What's up with this fork? I want a fork. And so I just addressed it on the website, and I said, if you have a good idea, you have to act on it because someone else is having that same idea. And it's a lot of times it comes down to being the first, not necessarily the best.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing we're from the same town, knowing they're a much bigger company, I can't come out with that same fork afterwards. You know exactly what it's going to look like. And so I put a post on my website, which I updated constantly. I said, hey, I'm scrapping the idea of this fork. I talked about it too much. Somebody else made it a reality. And so I'm just not going to run with it. I don't see it being a good use of my time given the circumstances. And not long after, I get another text from Ron Bonner. He's like, hey man, it's been a while. Let's get lunch. Let's catch up. I'm not thinking anything of it. And I'm okay. And I show up to a spot close to Sparky's. We all lived kind of in this Longwood area. And I show up to a spot, and I can see through the window that there's a group of people. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird, because he made it seem like it was just going to be us. And I go into this meeting, I sit down, order breakfast or whatever, and the lady walks away. And then immediately it's like, hey, okay, so we need to talk about what you have on your website. I'm like, what do you mean on my website? And they're like, posting about the forks, you're essentially saying that we stole your idea. That's not the case. We don't need you advertising that kind of stuff on our website. And I was like, oh, I intentionally worded this in a way where I didn't use your name or make it seem as if anything like that. And they're like, yeah, well, we just don't like it. And it's Ronnie and GL, their product development guy, who I respect highly. And this guy, Mike Johnson, who was not a BMXer and was just like their office manager. At the time, if you didn't ride BMX, I didn't want to hear shit about what you had to say about running a BMX business. I had no respect for him. I'm sure he was a great office manager, but me being a dickhead early 20s person that was very headstrong in what I wanted to do, I felt really disrespected by this. And I'm like, what you guys are doing right now is bullying. And I'm a small company, and I'm not going to be silenced. You're not going to bring me into this little thing and make me be quiet because I don't want to distro through you, or because I don't want to. If you guys are upset with what I have on my website, you can't just come to me and tell me to take it off my website or whatever. And we had I left in huffing and puffing, like kind of upset. And I talked to Ronnie later, and he was like, hey, I didn't realize what that was going to look like until afterwards. I didn't want it to be like that. And from then on, it was like, hey, if you ever have anything you need to talk about, let's talk, vice versa. But it was one of those things where the two people that were friends and respected each other, the business thing got in the middle. And I didn't like that at all. There was also an instance where when I was still doing things with Solid and Aaron Huff, there was so much competition, like I had the guy that owns Fiend. I think his name's Bob Pratt.
Yeah, he's one of them. Yeah.
I'm set. Well, I know that there's a bunch of, I know Garrett is involved, but Bob, I think, is the face for the company, I think, especially in Florida. And he always did a good job at showing out and supporting all of Dave Brownlow's FBM or FLBMX events. And even, he makes frames in Taiwan, just like Chad and all these other companies, but he claimed Florida. So he tried to be at all these events, and it was cool. I don't care. Anyone jump in the mix, because to me, what I'm doing is a very niche thing. I'm not anyone's competition. Like, if there's 100 people at the contest, maybe 1 or 2 people will be interested in what I'm doing. But spread across the country, there's a couple of guys like me in every city. That was my market. So I had no problem going to a contest, setting up. I didn't feel like I was doing the same thing as anyone. I didn't feel like I was stepping on anyone's toes by being another brand. But Bob Pratt walked over to me one time, and he looks at the frames, and he goes, solid, huh? And I said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, you're gonna have to be careful with those guys, and walked away, and I was like, okay, for no, he could have been like, oh, hey, I just want to let you know, I knew the story, he could have gone, hey, we had some samples made by this company, and they weren't necessarily what we were looking for, or they weren't up to the standard that we wanted them to be. It was just kind of a snarky, competitive remark. And I remember being like, okay, whatever, you know, who cares? Um, and then even people like DeGroot telling me like, that's cool what you're doing, but you're never going to go anywhere making USA frames. You're never going to make any money. You're never going to do anything. And it makes more sense to me now because Chad owned a bike shop. Chad owned a skate park. Chad owned all these things that were businesses. He looked at everything from a business perspective. I was a young, naive kid. I never thought that I would, you know, get a house or set my life up because of native. I just really wanted to do it. And so I don't think that some of these older guys could understand where I was coming from because they had already gone into business mode. But DeGroot at some point ended up hitting me up years later, like, hey, so what's Aaron Huff's phone number? Because I'm having a hard time getting handlebars made in Taiwan. And I'm like, oh, weird. Yeah. Yeah. Here's his phone number. I'll share it with you. And he had bars made, you know, and Huff was happy to make them. And then Chad was like, oh, you know, this is actually really cool, you know, because I can talk to the guy that makes them. It's American made. And then Chad started jumping into like, let me find a small machine shop to make my aluminum flatland pegs. Let me find a guy to do bar ends and all this stuff. And it kind of broke his way of thinking. And for that, I was glad because he was kind of like, I'm older. I know what I'm doing. Here's some advice because you don't seem like you understand. And then it came full circle to where he's asking me for advice. And I thought that was cool. I think one of the most unfortunate things was I had a really good friend, Joey Waresti. He was, like I said, the guy at Castleberry Trails. Amazing style, flawless. When we were younger, he was the guy at the skate park that at some point he realized that he was goofy footed and he didn't like it. And he was really good at riding and he learned every trick opposite footed. I know that sounds crazy, but like he could do any trick that he could do opposite footed and the opposite direction because he didn't want to look goofy footed. He's like, I want it to look good.
Yeah.
And he was also the guy that would like wall slap a beam in the rafters up out of the top of the mini ramp for funnies, you know, like he's not sponsored. He doesn't ride in the contest. He's nervous. He doesn't like attention. He's the guy that's digging on the trails. He's not getting necessarily the recognition, but he's known. He likes his position, you know, very humble guy. We decide he worked with me at OBMX and Outspoken. He's a super, super smart guy. He ran a place called Riveter for a few years, a mountain bike park.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
In the Carolinas. Yeah. So he ended up getting to kind of spend years dirt jumping and building stuff in that career. But he was big into technology like you and I are. And he said, make a cool frame that's even more specific to trails and let's make it techie. Like let's add some stuff in, some mountain bike type stuff. And is this bike, which I'm glad I still have, but it's a 3/8 solid dropout, super thin chain stays, seat stays. This is based on our frame, the Trendkill, but built-in seat clamp. And then this was the first time we used a big head tube. Joey was like, mountain bikes, road bikes, they're going taller head tube. This is a 5-inch head tube. Everything previously was 4 1/4 or 4.5. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And we did only the down tube gusset, no top tube gusset. We spread that triangle out as far as possible. And then he wanted to do the external Euro bottom bracket, which had kind of just come out from Profile. And this was just like a Mac Daddy trail bike. And he designed it. It was everything he ever wanted in a trail frame. He used to have an old shitty truck that we called the Hell Horse. He named the frame the Hell Horse. I sent the geometry and the stuff that I had worked on off to Aaron Huff. The frame comes in. It's expensive. I ordered a profile, you know, a bottom bracket and everything. Joey put the bike together. He loved it. He was like, this is super fucking cool. Maybe like 2 months later, he gets a job at Sparky's in product development, where he did really well. He helped do all kinds of stuff. He learned all kinds of stuff. He worked directly with Greg Lanthorn. And I don't know to what extent exactly, you know, but Joey designed all kinds of things and helped develop a lot of things for Sparky's over the years. But he went into that situation and he asked them, hey, like, you know, I have this potential signature frame with Native that we just got made and I'm riding it and I'm hoping that I can continue riding it. And they're like, yeah, no problem, whatever. And then, I don't know, maybe like a month later, he calls me upset and he's like, hey man, you know, like they tell me I have to ride a Sabrosa frame. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, they want everyone that works here to ride only their products and stuff. And I'm like, but they know that it's like you, and it's a signature frame that you designed, and yeah. And I'm like, okay, so BMX company that's supposed to love BMX and BMX riders is comfortable knowing that this guy had a custom frame made exactly to his specifications, and they're fine telling him that he can't ride that he has to ride the brand that they sell because it's a bad look. And I'm like, it's just essentially a custom frame. It doesn't say native on it anywhere. It was Joey's custom trail frame. And I remember that had happened before that meeting where I had met with these Sparkies guys, and I told them that too. I said, uncool for fucking making somebody make, in the name of business, telling a BMX rider that they shouldn't ride something or they can't ride something that they're comfortable riding because it needs to fit the brand, and it's a bad look if somebody. I don't think it's a bad look at all. I think it's fucking cool when people don't have all the same stuff. I like when people support brands. I like to look at people you and I's ages bikes at events because they're the ones that have jobs and they're picking exactly what they want. I always liked profile stuff because it came in a million colors and they did all these things. And so it was a bummer to me to see kind of like being pushed around and bullied and thinking that everyone's friends and that everyone wants you to be successful on a level, but they don't want you to be more successful than them. So I see a lot of these brands kind of pop up or not pop up anymore. It seems like there's not anyone pushing people to come up with new ideas or start a new brand. I remember when the division between Fit and Robbie Morales happened, I was like, what? Well, what the fuck happens now? What happens to Fit? What's he going to do? Colt came out, but Colt was weird because it was Adam Roy's zine. It was just a zine that Adam Roy in Texas ran called Colt, and they decided to adopt that logo and name into a bike company. And they were doing the same shit that I thought was cool, like raw frames made in America. And I was like, oh no, it's happening. Like let's do this. It's coming back. And it came back for a while and whatever. But I point out oftentimes to people, like, when was the last time you saw a really cool new brand appear? And it's because these guys purposely, they don't want to give up a piece of the pie that they have now. A new brand, especially somebody doing something innovative, is bad for business for them. All it means is that they're going to have to evolve and adapt. And there's companies that exist that every year they come out with really cool stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's sick. But then there's companies that I'm like, every year it's the same thing, but a new sticker package or whatever. And I'm like, why are we even doing this? And I know the sticker pack's being designed by a guy my age and whatever, because that was like the cutoff. There's no new young people starting stuff, working at brands. And that's unfortunate because I look at road bikes and I look at mountain bikes and I'm excited. Like the weird anodized colors, machining, build the way that they're building things, like the mediums, every weird wonky type of technology. I don't care. Try it. I want to see what it looks like on a BMX bike. Why not? People look back at the 90s and they go, oh my God, it was so bad. But like freestyle was cool. I had every BMX Plus. I loved race bikes. They looked like spacecrafts or something to me. They looked fast. They were insane. And now, like, no offense, but I went to this jam yesterday and every kid's bike is kind of like rattle can black. And I'm like not excited about any of their bikes, but that's the old man in me because I'm like, oh, short back end free coaster. Like I can't have fun on that bike, so it doesn't look cool to me. And then kids are looking at my bike and being like, why the fuck is your seat post so tall? And I'm like, because I want to sit down, And then the leather was a whole nother thing. That was something that happened on accident. My dad worked with leather for fun. I never paid attention to it. And when he passed away, as a healing thing, I decided to try to finish some of his projects. And it was like, leather's kind of cool, and I covered a seat. I did a pivotal seat and a railed seat, and this is the first leather pivotal seat I ever did. This was like maybe 2012 or something. And I recognized that all the vinyl that was on seats, even though there was a lot of cushion, like if the vinyl doesn't stretch, it still feels like a rock.
Yep.
So I was doing like deerskin and cowhide, and people were going like, you changed the foam, right? And I'm like, no, I just put a softer material on it so you can feel the. And people are like, whoa, well,
Yep.
it's cool, but I'm just worried it's going to get all torn up. And I would be like, this is 5 times thicker than the vinyl. I would do stuff where I'd take a piece of wood and I'd staple a piece of vinyl seat cover to one side and staple a piece of leather to the other side. And I'd turn a bench grinder on and I'd touch the stock vinyl seat cover and I'd go, look, we're burned through. And I'd flip the stick around and I'd stop the bench grinder with the leather, like fully stop it and pull it off. And I'm like, that's why you want a leather seat or whatever.
Yeah.
Now the issue is with pivotal and everything is there's people that'll break the seat here or break the seat here.
Yeah.
People are finally making new mold pans and making seats stronger and stuff. So I would feel bad sometimes charging money for what I had to do. Because someone would break a seat and they'd go, hey, what the fuck? And I'd go, well, I didn't make that, send it back to me. I'll put a new base in it or whatever. We'll call it a day. It even went far enough to where at the print shop, we molded and casted USA pivotal seats.
Oh yeah.
And it was really expensive and I didn't like the way that the molds look, but we did some of that stuff for fun. Just trying to do anything no one's done, like a USA made pivotal seat would be cool. I have small projects that are in my head that I still want to do at some point. But I got the opportunity to do all kinds of stuff like seats for Madeira, seats for Profile, seats for Cult. I did a couple seats for Band, I did seats for all these different entities. And a lot of times I forget, but like the Woods Room there, like I would go up to Pennsylvania and I would stay with the Pitosneys for a week or two at a time during a summer. And I'd get to see the wheel mill and the evolution of it every summer. And I'm like, this is sick, I'm at the wheel mill for a jam. I've got a bunch of stuff with me in my car. I'm banging out like trophies for the contest that are seats. I forget about how many times I did stuff like that, or we'd go on a trip and we'd hand print stickers in a weird color. And I'd see a kid 5 years later and I go, you're at Woodward in 2012, right? I can tell because of that sticker. And we were able to make all these really, really sick connections on a ground level with other BMXers and other cities and states. And Florida became a lake in the summer. It would rain and all the jumps were disgusting. But in Pennsylvania, the jumps are running. And then in the winter down here is go time for the jumps, but it's rock hard up there. So there was this migration that was happening on the East Coast where all these really serious trail riders were coming down to Castleberry because of this place they heard. And they're like, there can't be anything that great in Florida, but everything was really close together and straight up and down, like big box jumps and shit. And it was all clay driven in from Georgia that those guys would raise money and put in the ground. And ultimately, one of the downfalls was that the code enforcement said that we had put too much foreign dirt on the soil, that there wasn't there wasn't drainage for the property anymore. And one day someone's going to make a documentary about the Castleberry trails, and it's a whole thing. But we got the boot from that place and had to move, and I still drove by the house every day when I was working at Team Pain. And I pulled over one morning because I saw a construction crew. I pulled down the neighbor's driveway and pulled my camera out and recorded these guys trying to tear down the jumps, like with a skid steer. Couldn't take out the first lip and landing. Like so many years of hand packing and pouring motor oil on stuff. And I'm by myself, like watching a construction crew destroy, not my work, but all my friends' work for years and years and years. And I have this footage. I don't think anyone's ever seen it, things like that. But I had a camera with me at all times for this whole process. And so I've got photos of everyone doing everything. I've got photos of all the processes. I've got photos of the trails every season and videos and all this stuff. And, talking to you about this kind of makes me want to put together some sort of physical, like a zine or something, because all these stories have things that go along with them, and like there's some weird stuff going on in BMX right now, specifically Central Florida, like BMX is strange sometimes, and so, but it starts conversations where I see something like that and I'm like, okay, let me flip through some BMX stuff and try to figure out what's been going on. And it's weird to me, but it also opens up conversations with people that I've known through BMX, like my buddy Derek, whom I'm about to send a custom seat. And I made for him and it's a hemorrhoid, you know, and this may lead. We talked about doing some potential collaborations. Right
Whoa.
now, I'm working on prototypes for another run of hubs and seats for Corey Faust with Profile. We've done that a
Oh,
couple times.
sick.
We did some leather wrapped hubs. I think we had like, where's the shit? I just cut this off of my hubs to prototype the new ones, but it was like a Profile and Empire
Yeah.
collab, you know. Derek's a big fan of the band Death, so I made him this custom Deaths from Florida and everything. I didn't get to go to his recent event where Bad Luck 13 played. That's absolutely insane, and I love that Derek still does Little Devil the way that he did it a long time ago. It makes me feel like I can jump back into this thing whenever I want to, because like I said, younger me would be like, dude's a poser, but I'm just trying to make cool stuff for the people that, you know, enjoy BMX the way that I do. It's weird, right? Because it was a love relationship, and then I got in the business and it was a love-hate relationship. And then I
Yeah.
walked away, and one day I was just like, well, I was like, what really fucking happened? I'm like, let me analyze this in my own head. I've done things that most adults don't do, like therapy, and I've done all these things. I've done a lot of soul searching. A lot of really crazy and unfortunate things have happened to me in my life, and uh, um, people aren't the most sound and the most reliable thing, but people are like any mechanical thing. There's a way to fix them, and there's a way to move past things. But I'm excited now that enough people reach out to me. I don't have Native Bikes advertised anywhere, but people find my personal Instagram and reach out and go, hey, here's a photo of my bike from 10 years ago. I'm still riding this bike. Or I'll pay you whatever to have a seat, please, you know, or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm finally starting to come back around to it, because I don't feel like I'm like, I don't care about being a poser anymore. You know what I mean? I was like, years ago, the idea of not riding my bike every single day was so foreign to me. The idea of going on a trip to somewhere new, or like a road trip, and not having my bike to explore that city, I was like, what am I doing? Like, it's hard to explain to somebody that I spent my youth going to new cities and checking all the back alleys behind sketchy buildings to try to find something to ride for fun, you know? I
Yep.
remember going on a trip to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, you know, like the God spot for trails. Well, it's street as well for back in the day, but Posh and Caddy are right there. And everyone that I'm with are tickled to death to fucking, we know these guys at both of these spots. Really wonderful people, but we looked up to both of these spots as kids, these legendary spots, and we get to go there. And I'm there and I'm watching everyone ride. And then we go there a second day and I'm watching everyone ride. And I'm on a trip, and on the same trip as this guy, Gary DeMartine, that was one of the band guys that died in the car accident with Ricky.
Mm.
And Gary goes, hey man, this is cool and all. He's like, but you want to go try to find some street spots? And I'm like, yes. And we're like in the place that
Yeah.
is the best trails in the world. And me and Gary are like, let's get out of here, you know? And we found some crappy wall ride behind a building. We rode for 2 hours. And that's just what's weird about BMX is like the idea of driving behind a building right now and spending hours there for no reason, because there's like a transition or something. Oh my God, that's crazy. But when I was 18, there's nothing I'd rather do. I spend all night riding my bike with my friends and be dirty and go straight to high school the next day. I don't care, you know? And things change. Now these days I play guitar. I'm in a band. I like playing music more than anything. Um, Playing a guitar never broke my arm or broke my eye socket or made it to where I couldn't walk. Music's different because all the local bands want to hang out with each other and want to help each other and support. It's a little different. But I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I mean, I'm a full-time carpenter now. For the last 5 years, I've been building stuff for theme parks.
Oh,
I
that's
spent 3
cool.
years on some very big projects for the Universal Epic Universe. Um, I did a big revamp and a rebuild of an area of Epcot and got to install a $1 million full-size bronze statue of Walt Disney.
Whoa.
I do all kinds of really, really cool stuff, you know, like I'm at a smaller shop now. We do a lot of weird virtual reality and immersive things like that. And I get to, you know, 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 like run a CNC machine, and I get to build all these really crazy things. And then at the end of the day, I have this shop where I get to make fun stuff where I've made, speaker cabinets for me and my bandmates, and I'm making guitars, and I'm having fun learning how to build furniture and do all this stuff. And now through music, I find how many people I've met over the years that live a double life where they're like a singer in a band, but they have a real job, or they're a BMX guy and then they have a real job. And there's all these guys that are somewhere in the middle, like Matt Copeland from Profile. Like I went not long ago to Tampa, Florida to watch his first band, Reversal of Man, play a reunion show.
Yeah.
And you're talking about like for 20 years, I've been like, when are you going to play a reunion? He had another band called Light Yourself on Fire. They played at the Trails house in our living room, and Colt Fake lit himself on fire. And it was insane. Matt Copeland's like, that's the best show I've ever played. A house show, a guy lit himself on fire. But Matt is a very humble guy, and he's in all these bands that are very, very decorated, legendary bands. And he would never, ever in his life tell you, hey, I was in this band that did really well, but I got to go see Matt play this reunion show, and it was Reversal of Man Matt, and some BMX friends were there. I also have this friend Henry that is in all these amazing bands, Dove and Flora and all these things, and his bands have traveled the world, and I've seen him get to play festivals, and I see a snippet on Instagram, and he's wearing a Native Bike shirt, like playing music in front of 5,000 people. And I met Henry through BMX first before I realized he was a musician, and this guy Dave Malinsky was in a band called Assuck, and he ran Woodward for 18 years, and everyone knew him as this uptight skater, but I knew him as like the guy that sang in the crazy fucking punk rock band. And so you learn that like BMX doesn't have to be a life thing. BMX can be it is, I guess to some extent, I'm always going to have BMXer as a label for my life. But right now, when people ask me like what I do and what I'm interested in, BMX doesn't come up. I don't bring it up. I've allowed it to be a thing that I like again. It's not my life. It's not my business. And it feels way better. Like when I look at BMX from an outsider's perspective, like I see like this crazy guy, Max Miller, releasing video parts, and I'm like, and I look at it and I'm like, okay, who is this? Is fit? I'm like, there's absolutely nothing bad I could say or think about this. I'm like, this is the right direction for BMX. But in the last 5 years, there's probably all kinds of things that I would have noticed that would have made me personally upset because of my view of BMX or whatever. But my view doesn't matter. And no offense, but your view doesn't matter. Like 20 years from now, there's going to be kids riding BMX that don't know anything about me or you or, Trey or Sparky's or Chad or any of that stuff. They're not going to pick up a bike because of the legacy of BMX. They're just going to see a bike. At this jam yesterday, there's like just kids from the neighborhood that have no concept of skate park etiquette, no concept of like, you have to pull your front wheel up when you're going up on a curb or you eat shit. And they're going, hey, can I borrow your bike? Can I borrow your bike? And these kids are like, sure. And they're letting these kids ride around and they're eating shit and they're learning the lessons, the day one lessons. Like they're going, oh, you can't do that. You got to jump off that. You can't. And I'm like, okay, they don't know anything they don't even know who Dave Mira is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if it's the Olympics that introduces a kid. I don't care if it's Swamp Fest that introduces a kid. I don't care if it's an 11-year-old kid in Japan that's the best flatland rider in the world that's never going to see a racetrack or street riding. I don't care. If it's something that they enjoy doing and they love it, I think anyone should be able to do whatever they fucking want, because BMX isn't a thing that belongs to anyone. Nobody owes it anything. It doesn't owe anything to anyone. It's not real. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
I can't have an opinion about cars. It's not going to change anything, just because I like cars.
Yeah. I think a huge like disconnect in all of these conversations lately is this lack of separation of BMX as a thing people do and the BMX industry. And when people just say BMX, it makes it sound like they're talking about all of BMX,
encompassing. Yeah.
But in reality, they're like, they don't like intentionally put thought into the fact that they're only talking about this finite part of it, and then that
Yeah,
creates confusion, makes people
sure.
react certain ways. And I
Yeah.
think if it was like more of a, oh, I'm talking about this very specific side of things and not the
Mhm.
whole of it, it would be interpreted in a totally different way, all of these different
Yeah.
conversations.
I think traveling and meeting new people really made me understand, like, okay, my singular perspective of what's going on is not, there are so many people that see what I'm doing but don't know what I'm going through, or they think Florida's cool but they don't know what's really going on down here, or they
Yeah.
don't. So I'm like, I can't expect somebody to know the things that I know if they don't have access to them. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, as well, people are really good at cultivating a version of themselves that they want social media to see.
Everyone. Yeah.
And that's another weird thing, is like, as BMXers, I thought, getting to meet someone like Van Homan and say hi at a contest was so cool when I was younger. It's kind of corny, to like walk up to a pro BMXer and be like, hey man, like, all those video parts made me want to ride or whatever. I think are really fucking cool. But now stuff like Instagram exists where, like, I could just message Van Homan right now, and I know Van, but if I didn't, I could say, hey Van, I'm some guy from Florida and I rode BMX for a long time and I really liked you and I really respected you. And he will probably see that and like it and go, oh, cool, thanks, man. Like, we're in an age right now where we're so connected that if you wanted to know anything about BMX or anything about the history or the business, you can go straight to the source and get an answer. We're like the most connected that we've ever been, but we're the most divided. I don't understand, like, we have the ability to. Where do you live?
Ohio.
Ohio. You know what I mean? I live in Florida. We're talking right now. Even if this was 10 years ago, the resolution of this conversation would be gross.
Yeah.
The internet would be bad, things like this. And
Yep.
I'm in my living room having a comfortable conversation about this. A big thing is that I think BMX needs to have more conversations. People don't talk to each other. People have an idea of how everything is. Um, and I'm telling you, like, only now, after years of being completely removed from this, can I realize my own ignorance, and all this stuff is just like, I was able to get super happy and super unhappy for years about all of this, and I didn't need to. I should have been focused on only the good things, and I should have been focused on, anytime something raises a red flag as like, this is creating a rift between friends and it's the business side that's doing it, I should have pulled that red flag and recognized it. But when I say all in, like, people say they like BMX, dude, I fucking lived at the party house. I worked at the skate park full time. I was trying to do my own company. I was working for a distribution that was already running companies. Like, I couldn't get more BMX than that.
Skate park company.
Yeah, yeah. And I worked for a skate for a, I tried to look at it from all angles. I'm like, I've done the BMXer that wants to be a part of everything, to working for the skate park, to working for the bike shop, to working for the BMX specific bike shop, to working at, the print shop that printed all the soft goods for all the BMX companies. I wanted to do all of it. And I think the ultimate downfall was that I went way too deep and it just became my whole life, and it wasn't anything that I could clock out of.
Yeah.
I'd wake up in the morning upset because of something I saw on the internet, but I did it to myself. Why am I even upset about that? Why do I even care? And getting away from it helped me realize all these things, and now I think, like, okay, whatever, everyone was mad at me or people were mad or whatever, but now there's a 40,000 square foot skate park in my area and everyone loves it, and it's bikes allowed, and you're allowed to go anytime you want. Nobody made rules about anything. It's a fucking awesome skate park. And then across the street is a huge pump track. Um, I've always been known probably as somebody that has an opinion. I'm a loud mouth because I didn't go with the flow. I didn't want to put the t-shirt on everyone else is wearing. I didn't want to just say, okay, yeah, everyone else says it's cool, I'll say it's cool. I was like, I think it's not cool because everyone thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
And I was kind of difficult in that aspect, but I don't know. I don't want to say like punk rock or anything like that, but I was just like, I want to do something different. Like, I would see S&M making these ads back in the day, making fun of all these companies for being goofy. And I was like, why, let's poke fun at each other. It's fine. But in that era of BMX that I was in, it was not okay. Everyone was very sensitive. Everyone was very, you don't do this, you don't do that. I'm like, I liked BMX because Steve Crandall blew up toilets and had fistfights in the videos. And I got to see tits when I was 17 years old because I downloaded, Albert Street on LimeWire or whatever. And the very first animal video, I disintegrated the tape of the very first animal video, like every single day. It was like me and Dave Mahoney, a couple of guys that we rode with when we were early in high school. Dave had cool parents. Dave's dad, we had a quarter pipe, we had a grind box. Dave's dad built a grind box that a car hit one time and it mutilated the car, and the grind box is fine. Like,
Wow.
David had the cool parents. Everyone was allowed to lounge in the living room and watch all the videos. David had every new video. You meet up at David's house, we watch a video to get pumped, and then we go whatever, destroy the local city, grind all the ledges, and there's no skate parks or anything. And that was just our little world. On Saturdays, we would ride the 10 or 11 miles to downtown Orlando and grind some ledges, and then someone would get a flat tire, and then the day's over. None of us have cars. You got to figure out how to get home.
Yep.
It was very much this underground when you say DIY, like a kid on his BMX bike with some wrenches in his backpack on an adventure is about as DIY as it gets. Because unfortunately, you can't. Well, you can, but it's not like a skater can just be like, all right, I'm going to skate 11 miles today to downtown. Like, it would be a nightmare.
Right.
For me, at least, the bike was my freedom. It was my transportation. And that's where it started. And I had to think about, what is it that made me like BMX? And it was just the idea of maybe putting headphones in and riding by myself, or riding up and down alleyways to try to find a spot or whatever. And I've tried to do that in the last couple of years. A couple of times I pulled my bike out and I had a really good time by myself. But I get to those crossroads where I'm like, oh, here's a wall ride. And I'm like, should I do that? Should I try this wall ride and is it even worth it? And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna let this one go. And so my tires have pretty much stayed on the ground for the last couple of years. I did some pedal grinds yesterday at this jam, and it was funny, but I was thinking about Monday morning and being hurt, and I was like, all right, I'm good. But
Yeah.
so overall, I would just say that, like, BMX is fucking cool. It's always been cool. People try to glom onto it or make it theirs, and it's just not a thing that you can do. You can leave a mark on it and you can have influence, but you'll never sway the masses. BMX is always going to do what it's going to do, like, it's going to be popular, and then 10 years later it's not going to be, and then it's going to be popular again, and the big brands are going to come in and then leave, and the small brands are going to have to step up, and then the big brands are come in again. And it always happens. It happened to the generation before me.
Yep.
It'll happen again, but
yeah,
that's where we are, and I see you do these cool interviews with people and they get to tell their story, and I think about often that I do get people contacting me all the time, and they ask about a seat or they want a frame or whatever, and I'm like, nobody knows what I did or like how I went about it, and it all happened. I didn't wake up one day and want to start a bike company. It was this whole story and my surroundings and the people involved and all that, and those are the reasons why it happened and it ended,
Yeah.
But at this point, I feel like there's a beginning and an end to that story, and I'm fine with it. And I like making things. Like, that's my life these days. I'm a fabricator. I make all kinds of things. And so I do want to do some more native leather stuff here in the future. I took a couple years of me bothering myself about, you're a poser, you can't sell BMX stuff if you don't ride BMX. But I don't really care anymore, because, like I said, BMX is a thing. I'm a BMX enthusiast. I want to provide things for other BMX enthusiasts. I shouldn't feel bad about it. I love BMX.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
man, look at that. That's awesome.
That's, like, to me, the best BMX photo ever taken.
That's really good too. Whoever did that did a good job.
It's this guy, James Covington. He did all of our, like, a lot of our design for t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. We're big metal fans, so this was like one of the Trendkill stickers. This was a Dean Guitars ad, and he was holding a guitar. And James, for reference, made me hold the frame in that position. He took a picture and redrew this, but
yeah,
everything had a theme, and we loved music being involved and everything. But Yeah, BMX is, I don't claim BMX anymore, but it's a thing that I love, and I have a few things on the wall in my house to remind me. But
So
I have kind of moved on, but I love watching what happens, and I love seeing new parts come out. I still get excited anytime a new product exists. It's just not my entire life anymore.
yeah, so after all this story, can't help but wonder what made you finally decide to tell it.
To tell it, well, I always saw a lot of things happening in this Central Florida scene. Um, and there were only a few people that really told the story or curated what was going on, or there were only a few people that people cared to pay attention to. Like, if you just want to cut straight to the chase, you know what I mean? You can go to Trey's Instagram or you can see what the group's doing. And for a time period, they were a really good representation of what was happening in Florida because Chad was at the shop. Everyone went to that shop. Jams were happening in the parking lot of that place. Stuff was happening either at the trails or transition to, Trey was doing a lot with Swamp Fest and things like that. But I'm looking at things happening right now where people are arguing about if Colt should be able to continue doing band now that Ricky's passed away. Um, and I have to interject myself into some of these things, not because of my personal opinions, but because I see people extremely interjecting their personal opinions about what should happen to a BMX company or what someone should be able to do or what they're allowed to
Hmm.
do. Or I see people think that maybe Trey represents Florida and what happens down here and what happened down here, and or that Chad is a representation of everything happening. And I'm seeing people voice opinions from the point of view of Florida BMX, and there's just a lot of stories that never got told and a lot of things that existed. And during all that thing, I had no reason to be like, hey, I'm over here doing this thing and I want
Hmm.
people to pay attention to it. It was happening because the people that I wanted, that were my market, knew what I was doing. But now that it's all said and done, I have all these people asking questions these days, like what happened, or where did you go, or why don't you do seats anymore? And they don't know where it all started.
Yeah.
And I have been getting a lot of questions from people, where'd you go, or how did it start, or what happened with the trails, or what happened with this and that. And enough time passed where I can bring up names or bring up events or talk about things, and it doesn't put me in a bad mood. It's just kind of like neutral. I don't care. I can talk about it from an outside perspective and explain something in a rational way instead of letting my emotions get involved or allow me to sway things a certain way. Because when it comes down to it, all of the things that I didn't like about BMX were business related.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the people, it wasn't the environment. I was lucky enough to be around shops that were well stocked, amazing skate parks. The trails was a weird place where people just came all around all year round. I could take photographs. I like photography. There was plenty of people that could give me feedback on products. All these other companies existed. There was so much happening. And I think that if I wasn't wrapped up in my own shit with my own company, I probably would have enjoyed things a lot more. But there was a lot more competition and a lot less friendliness than people may have believed at certain times, because the scene was falling apart because the skate park closed and the trails house all went away in a very kind of short period. And that
Yeah.
was like, for a lot of people, you go to the trails during the day, there's someone there. Once the sun starts to go down, you go to the skate park, there's always people there. That was the two spots. And then they were both gone. And Chad had to it was like, do I open a skate park without a shop, or do I open a shop without a skate park? I can't afford both of them anymore.
Yeah.
And at one point, Mesh was like one of the only Nike SB dealers in Florida, and they were making money hand over fist. And the two skate owners, one of them in particular, made a bunch of bad business decisions with Chad's money and then left.
Mm.
And if there's anything I can say that's, to me, would be left behind by Chad DeGroot as a legacy, is Mission Skate Park and Mesh Skate Park, because he was doing that shit at a young age, and I can't imagine what the actual sacrifice was for there to be a warehouse for me and my friends to ride in.
Yeah.
Like, I think you could question all kinds of things, like, why do you start a business? Why do you start making frames? Why do you do these things? Like, no one ever started an indoor skate park thinking they were going to make money or a lot of money.
Yeah.
Chad just did this because it seemed like the next thing for him to do in the evolution of what he was doing for BMX. And had he not done that, there'd be no mesh. There would have been the trails, but probably not to that extent.
Right.
There's so much that would not have happened in Central Florida if it wasn't for Mission and Mesh and all these people that went on to be pro BMX riders or do things that were influential. Ricky Bates, Trey. I mean, there's a massive list of people that, to me, it's hard for me to understand who people know and don't know because I'm from Florida, you know, like people that are Florida legends maybe no one's ever heard of, but all these amazing riders. And you would go to the skate park during that time period and there'd be 40, 50 people at the skate park. People would show up not even to ride, just to, they're like, my leg hurt. My legs hurt. I'm just coming to hang out with everyone.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time I like felt the urge to go somewhere where a bunch of BMXers were to hang out. It's weird. But also, we all were teenagers, and now we're all adults. I'm almost 40 years old, so of course things are going to change. Even if when I was 18, I thought I was going to be sitting on the porch with 80-year-old Ricky, you know, talking shit about BMX. And sometimes the plan just changes. You know what I mean? I was with Ricky in Las Vegas the day before the accident, and he dropped a bunch of us off at the airport to fly home. Him and Gary were like, we're going to keep road tripping. We're going to go out to Arizona. And we piled in his fucking car. It was like me and the dude Aaron that owned the print shop and Ryan Scher and Ryan Scher's now wife and Ricky's girlfriend and Gary. And all of us are like sardines in a Ford Explorer to the airport. And he drops us off and we say bye, you know. And then the next day, his girlfriend calls and is like, hey, I haven't heard from him all night. What do you know? Like, have you heard from him? And for that kind of thing to unfold in real time and to find out that Ricky had passed away a day after we saw him, it was really weird. And it shook the whole scene big time. And I'm talking to Colt recently. You have to find the silver lining in everything. And if anything, Ricky's forever young. I'll never get to see what Ricky looks like as an old, hurt person. In my head, a lot of people didn't meet Ricky in real life. Ricky was like 6'1", 6'2", probably 240 pounds. He was huge. And to see a guy like that doing the shit he was doing on a bicycle is nuts. And I think he took everything that he saw when we were growing up and pushed it a little bit further. And now there's like young kids that are doing like band style riding and they're jumping off roofs and stuff. And for me, I was always like, why would you want to jump off of a fucking roof?
Yeah.
Like it did, like Ricky could ride super smooth trails like he rides trails every day and then jump off a roof to flat and make it look smooth. So I was lucky enough to grow up with these people that were extremely well-rounded. They weren't trail riders or street riders. Like we were all BMX riders. And sometimes you would get lucky enough to get everyone at a street riding session downtown. There'd be 25 people wreaking havoc, or we would have trail jams at that house that people would come from all over Florida and it was free and it didn't cost anything. And that's another thing that I think is weird is the amount of money involved in BMX events now, because we talk about like, oh, the Olympics is bad, but the Olympics is also on television for free.
Yeah.
We say corporate sponsors are bad, but the underground contest costs a lot of money to get into. I understand that there's different prices and costs that come along with certain things, but it's hard to be like, you know, fuck the corporations. Our event is sponsored by Monster Energy Drink. You know, I'm like, so
Yeah.
everyone needs to survive, and that's fine. But once I got to a point where I didn't need to survive from BMX at all, I was able to regain my relationship with the love for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't rely on BMX to pay any of my bills. That's where it comes. I think that's where people get mixed up, where they're like, BMX owes me or I owe BMX. If you put time and effort into anything BMX related, it's a gamble. You're running a really big risk of not getting anything out of it. Because even if we just talk about like my riding career, I have a couple of clips in a band video, you know, but I've broken my right ankle. I've broken my left foot. I've torn my left ACL. my left meniscus, my right MCL. I've fractured my right femur. I've torn my rotator cuff on my left arm. I've full AC separation on my right. I've broken my right thumb. I've broken my teeth out. I've broken my eye socket, my cheekbone. 12 to 15 serious concussions.
Jeez.
I'm never going to get any of that back. Why would I expect to get that back? I dropped into the ramp. I plowed my head into the ground. BMX doesn't owe me anything. I did that to myself. I did that because I saw that and I said, that's fucking cool. I want to do that. And I fell on my head a bunch of times and I was like, okay, I can't do it like that. I got to do it different. And then there were people that were just very naturally talented that I got to watch ride. And it was such a treat to be able to live at that trails house and wake up and walk out in the morning and watch Mark Mulville and Mike Cottle just for fun before work, riding the jumps and then leave and go to work.
Yeah.
And those guys were nuts, dude. They would get up before the sun and ride. They would show up and work on the jumps for hours and then go to work so they could have 1 hour of riding time at the end of the day. That's like some I love BMX. That's not people. I think the real people that love BMX these days are people like trail riders. Like you go to a place like Caddy and you look at what is there and they go, oh no, this isn't Bobcats. This is all by hand. And you know the original guys that were digging there, and you go to a place, you're lucky enough to have seen a place like Posh. It was in all these magazines, and you think it's big, and then you see it in real life, and you're like, oh my God. And every one of these jumps, once you build it, it's not like there it is. It's got to be maintained. And these guys are older guys usually, and they're guys that have full-on careers and jobs. And that digging and riding big BMX jumps is what they do to stay sane and healthy. I mean, it's their workout or whatever, and and that to me is super fucking cool because it's like, how do you find a way to still love something when you're 40 years old or whatever? And trail riders are the ones that I think really figured it out. I don't know, because there's an extreme amount of work versus reward.
Yeah.
And if they don't go dig on the trails, they don't have anything to ride. But so it's also crazy that a local set of jumps will only have like a handful of guys that are the main guys, and everyone wants to come to the jam and show up, and it's crazy. But they don't understand the hard work that went in. I'm sure if they thought about it or understood it, it'd be different. But you have to do stuff because you like it. That's really what it comes down to. And I liked Native. I liked a lot of the things I did with Native, but a bunch of stuff non-Native related made me not like things. And now all this time later, I do feel like I can tell the story because I'm not so upset about things that I allowed myself to get upset about. That's another thing too, is I've had no problem being vocal about things in the past. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes you got to know, like, okay, I put my foot in my mouth. Sorry, I fucked up. That was stupid of me to say. There's not a lot of humility these days. It's like people do something weird and then they don't get the reaction they want, and then they dig deeper into it. And humility goes a long way. Just to say something like, hey, I know I put something out on the internet and it kind of rubbed everyone the wrong way. I just want to say sorry. That's not what I was trying to do. You know, instead just delete it and dig harder into I am what I am. And or just the internet may be one of the worst fucking things that happened for BMX also.
The internet is the best worst thing ever invented.
It is.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get on the come up every single day because I wanted to see the new edits and all that stuff. But then the comments section. And you're in the comments section, it's a whole nother world. And the ability to be anonymous did a lot for people's confidence. And it allowed a bunch of negativity to spread with zero consequence.
Yeah.
And that was weird. But someone like Adam, like I've hung out with Adam. Adam used to come to Florida. I remember specifically one time going to ride street. This is super weird. Me and Ricky Bates and Adam 22 and Mike Spinner. And we're all in my car to go ride street.
Whoa.
And Adam 22 is fucking with Mike Spinner so bad that Spinner is like, fuck this, stop the car. I'm getting out of the car, fuck this guy. And I'm like, we're all, and this was Mike Spinner before anyone knew him. He was from South Florida and he knew Ricky, and he would have to save up gas money to come to Orlando and stay on Ricky's couch for 2 weeks or whatever. And he had, little dreadlocks. He looked like Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons. And Mike Spinner is the fucking real deal, dude. He was always the most humble, nice dude. He had nothing. He had no fucking money. All he wanted to do is ride. And that was one of those other weird guys that would slip into the band videos. Like, Mike Spinner in a band video, that doesn't make any fucking sense. But he can hang. He'd come to the trails and he or whatever, stay at Ricky's apartment. He'd go, yeah, let's go ride street. I'm a do tour. I'm eventually going to be a do tour guy, but I'll go ride a curb all day. That was the fun stuff. But I've met so many people because Castleberry or Mesh or whatever. And like, this was before the come up. Adam was coming down to stay with Ricky and we just all kind of knew each other. And Adam decided one day, this is my business model. I'm going to do this. And he doesn't do the come up anymore, but look what it transitioned into. Like, people who don't know anything about BMX know who Adam is.
Yeah.
He may not be a BMXer anymore or talk about BMX like he does, but he also understands that BMX got him where he is, and he still mentions it and he still has respect for it and everything. But he probably did like I did, where at some point he's like, this isn't my favorite thing in the world anymore, and I want to find something new. And seems like now he's the come up for anything hip hop related.
Yeah, basically
for the whole world. And whatever, I'm happy for him. He does all kinds of weird internet content and things that I probably wouldn't do with my own life, but more power to him, dude. The guy's got a crazy successful wife and a family and all that stuff, and it all comes from some guy that I met through BMX. And I look at the internet, and I go, oh, I know that guy through BMX. Or I'm in Walmart and there's a Mike Spinner complete bike, and I'm like, oh, that kid used to sleep on the couch or whatever. And I could call Mike Spinner right now and he would pick up and he'd go, oh no, James, what's up? What the hell's going on? Like, I always try to keep my relationships with people that way. Me and Mike Spinner, I haven't talked to him forever, but if he knocked on the door right now, I'd invite him inside and we'd have a good time.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, bikes and skate parks and all this stuff exists, but they're nothing without the people that are on the bikes and riding these things. And it's the humans that put the meaning there. And it's up to all of us individually what that meaning is. And so how much you feed into someone else's meaning and apply that to your own meaning is up to you. And no one person in all of BMX industry or BMX as a whole gets to have a say or should dictate what any one other person meaning of BMX is. Because at the end of the day, the bikes, if we stopped existing, the bikes aren't going to ride themselves at the skate parks. It's all us and our interpretation of it.
And I think the best thing that you can do is when you're unhappy with something that is pertaining to the thing that you love most, whether it's BMX or, I don't know, football or hockey or whatever, like, the worst thing you can do is complain. The best thing that you can do is come up with an alternative. Maybe it's not the alternative that everyone likes, but an alternative is a step in the right direction. And the best thing you can do is hold a jam or make a video or make a bike part. If you don't like the jams and the videos happening now and you don't like the bike parts that are being produced, complaining isn't going to do anything. Make a new stem that no one's ever seen. Throw a jam somewhere that is a place where there's something that's going to draw people. Like I said, yesterday I was at a local jam, and I hear constantly from people about how the scene sucks because no one supports each other and people throw jams and no one's there. And I'm at a jam and no one's there. Like, no one from the other crews are there. But those other crews will complain no one shows up to their jams. I'm like, you didn't show up to the other crew's jam. There's no reason for this to be competition. Like, when I was 17, if I could go downtown and find one other person riding street, I lost my mind. This guy, Matt Perkins, does this Orlando street jam every year. Matt Perkins is just like local guy. I know he had like some hookups with Sparkies, and I know that he has his own opinions about things that have happened over the years in Central Florida, but he's unwavering in trying to do this jam every year. And every year it gets bigger, but that group of kids is I don't give a fuck about the politics kids. I just want to show up and ride. And Matt is weird in that he doesn't fit the mold of normal BMXer. He's like very like heavy metal. He loves obscure metal bands. His bike is completely black. He's like, but he'll ride a curb or he'll ride a vert ramp or whatever. Or he'll ride a fixed gear back alley race. He doesn't care. His bicycles are his life. And at some point, he kind of saw the light too, and it was like, I don't care what's going on. I'm just going to do my own jams. Street Lando, I think is what they're called. I've been to a couple of them. They're awesome. He only wants to He only wants the jams to be supported by local brands or brands that are cool like him that support him, and that's cool. And there's a company called Frelo or something here in Florida.
Yeah.
They CNC trophies and bike parts, and you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they're not trying to push this agenda of like, hey, we're this really cool bike company, we're gonna make all this new stuff. And but I'm at this jam yesterday and there's this CNC plaque trophy. I'm like, you guys know the Frelo guys? And they're like, oh, a friend of ours does. And I'm like, how did this come about? Did you contact him or he contact you? Oh, he heard we were doing the jam and he kind of like does this thing where he makes trophies for all the contests and stuff. And I'm like, why? He has no stake in that. He has no reason. Like maybe Frelo Bikes goes on the flyer in the corner. He has no reason to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But some kid that went to the jam and one that's most stoked has this thing that another BMXer made for the jam. And we don't do enough of that anymore. Like see stuff like the Matt Hoffman crazy freaking bikes thing and you'd win a wrestling belt.
Yeah, or
Like
the
what the
straight
hell?
jacket.
It's not about the prize, but it's about the thought that goes into everything that is the event and everything, you know.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't know, you know, you can't talk about corporate BMX and all this stuff without Dew Tour and X Games, right? And the real deal of the story is that Matt Hoffman invented X Games. He did it. So there's no X Games without Matt Hoffman. So all these, the Tony Hawk 900 and the vert ramps on all these things, like not possible if it's not for Matt Hoffman, who was grassroots. I love BMX. I explode every bike I touch because bikes aren't strong enough for me. Like I'm going to build the biggest thing ever. I'm friends with Evel Knievel. I want to be crazy. And again, Matt Hoffman comes to Orlando because he wants to experience Swamp Fest. But who does he call to stay in Orlando with? He calls Tim Payne, the guy that BMX is like, oh, Tim Payne hates BMX. And I'm working at Team Payne and Matt's going, Tim comes in and he goes, hey man, Matt's going to come to town for a week to stay for Swamp Fest. Like, would you be able to like, would you hang out with him for the one day I'm not gonna be able to be out there? I'm like, yeah, what the fuck, like, and so Matt brings a bunch of Hoffman stuff to show off because they were doing a reissue of the Taj and a couple of things at that time. And he doesn't have a tent. And he goes, fuck, I forgot a tent. I was like, Tim, do you have any tents? And he goes, I only have these tents. They're these Team Payne tents we use for events. And so Matt Hoffman shows up to Swamp Fest and pops open this Team Payne tent. And the thing is, Tim, being somebody who loves ramps, Tim started out literally just a guy in Florida that was just some, stonery skateboarder, and he figured out ramps and made it. He did not wake up one day and say, I'm going to make a career out of this. It happened to him.
Yeah.
And he's friends with Matt Hoffman, like Tim built that 22-foot quarter pipe that Matt set the world record air on. Tim Payne pulled Matt in on the dirt bike.
Yeah.
They're friends. Like Tim has the helmet that he fell wearing, the huge dent in the back where he got a concussion. And without trying to cause problems, Tim goes, hey, I know you guys don't like Team Payne or whatever, but he's like, I want to sponsor Swamp Fest because this is like this is the beginnings I came from. Sketchy backyard ramps and all this stuff. I think this is cool, but it doesn't make sense for me to give you money without being able to do some advertising. He's like, let me give you $1,000 and just put up a couple banners. And Trey was like, no, absolutely not. Team Payne is not good for BMX. And he's like, oh, okay. And then Tim shows up with Matt Hoffman, and Matt Hoffman is setting up these tents. He doesn't know about the Florida scene and the contention with Team Payne and anti-BMX. I see Matt Hoffman in a parking lot setting up his products under a tent, and he's excited to show them. And Trey comes up to me. He goes, what does he think he's doing? What do you mean? I already told Tim he can't sponsor the event. I'm like, I think you got to go tell Matt Hoffman he can't do something then, I'm like, if you don't like the tent, you got to go tell Matt Hoffman. I'm not going to go over there and tell him. He doesn't see that Team Payne logo. He's Matt Hoffman. He's trying to advertise his bike company. And if you don't like that he's using that tent, which he's not using maliciously or on purpose, it's just what he has, then you can go talk to him, And that's the level that we're at with Petty, where we're like, I don't want the Team Payne logo at my contest so bad that I'm willing to go tell Matt Hoffman that he can't just, and then that blew over like, maybe just shut up, okay, cool. But it even got to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm a BMXer. I need to squash this beef because there's only 1 or 2 skate parks in Florida that don't allow bikes anymore, and they're never going to allow bikes. Tim has contacted the cities and done everything he can, but he doesn't own those skate parks. It's like you build a house, you don't get to decide who buys it and lives in it
Right.
or what color it gets painted. Unfortunately, he can call the cities and go, "Hey guys, like all the other parks don't have fences and don't charge money, but this is just how it's going to be." And the Team Pain crew started doing a lot of this weird small backyard stuff. There's a guy that lives close to St. Augustine that has a crazy concrete pump track on his property. It's mostly for skating. It's not the best for BMX, but he has an indoor bowl and all this stuff. This guy Pat, and I got Trey and some of those guys out there one day to check the place out while Team Pain guys were building, and then they started asking questions about concrete, and then they're interested in concrete, and then they do something like the Weirdo World for Big Boy, who was living in Orlando. That's a whole thing I forgot to cover as well. Big Boy moved to Orlando, Scotty Kramer moved to Orlando, Sean Riccaney moved to Orlando. All these people moved to Orlando, and they were all doing these bloggy things, and everyone was part of each other's channels. And then all of a sudden, nobody was friends anymore, and everyone moved away from Florida. There's a reason for all that. That's not my story to tell, but things like that happen, and so Big Boy moves away, and Trey's ramps are kind of in disrepair, and he's asking about, what can Team Pain do for me, or what can we, and I'm like, well, for some of these backyard things, Tim isn't paying the crew. Like, they're just doing subcontracted work, and they're using all the Team Pain tools and all that stuff. Tim would be fine with those guys if they had downtime doing, and it's kind of like, how do we squash the beef? And I'm like, I think you need to talk to Tim. And I bring Trey into a conversation at Team Pain. And I say, hey, look, like, this is what we're doing these days. And here's a huge map of 30 something skate parks in Florida, and only 2 of them don't let bikes. Like, we want as many bikes at these meetings as possible to let people know, like, it's important to do this. Like, you have to be there from the beginning. You don't get to complain afterwards, because it's already built and all that stuff. And Trey came in a little fired up, which he's very passionate about BMX, and he said, I don't want to support your company unless bikes are allowed in a Lakeland skate park. And Tim calmly explained, like, I have nothing to do with that. I can't do anything. I can call them right now. They don't want to talk to me because they don't want a contractor. Like, they're irritated with him. They don't want a contractor telling them what to do with the project they paid for. So then it turns into, well, I need some stuff built in my backyard. Like, what kind of deal can we cut with, like, can you help me out with costs on materials? And that was a discussion that I was, willing to have with Trey. Like, hey, get some financial help with building some stuff in your yard, then maybe hang up a banner or 2 or something like that. You saw the crew work on this other guy's property. They're just normal ass guys. They think your Swamp Fest event is cool, all this stuff. And it kind of came down to Trey was like, unless he's going to build a concrete skate park in my backyard for free, I'm not going to advertise. And then that was the end of it. It was like, why would this guy spend $100,000 to build a concrete park in Trey's backyard to advertise? Why would he want to do that? And so he still pushes the narrative of Team Pain being bad for BMX, but he's at the Castleberry skate park riding freely every day. So he can hate all of it and everything, but Team Pain provided his newest local awesome skate park that he can ride at night, and he doesn't have to pay for it, and he can film all his content at, and he can have a great time. And so for that, I'm like, cool, awesome. I don't care. I don't talk to him anymore, but something that I did also provided a way for him to have fun and all of that. That's cool. I went to the grand opening. I saw him. We didn't get close to each other. I saw him from afar. But he was having a good time, and I see people like Colt runs up immediately. Hey, what's going on, man? Like, and it's weird because all these people that are my age that are like between 35 and 40 years old now, a lot of these guys that ripped back in the day are still really good at riding bikes.
He's incredible.
Colt Fake on a bicycle is insane. It's like he was born to do that.
Yeah.
And at that grand opening, I'm watching people kind of do stuff, but I'm catching up with Matt Copeland. I'm taking up his whole time. We're talking about music, and he's going, hey, man, I got to get some photos of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I know. So, and we're watching Colt like ride this bowl that no one's ridden yet, and he's finding every scary line in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, dude, like you still do it. You're still in it. It makes me happy to see. And he's got I think his son's like almost a teenager. Like he's a dad. He does a normal job. He works part-time at Universal doing all kinds of stuff, but like he rides a bicycle in the ET parade. Um,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, and he does all kinds of things. But when you ride BMX for a long time, one day you realize you got to get a real job. And an issue for some of these guys is they spent their whole lives riding BMX, and now it's things are changing and the finances aren't where they are, and now people are scrambling to try to figure out however they can make money still attached to BMX without having to get the real job. But the best thing I ever did was just get a real job, and I was able to just be completely free of any financial anything with this. I can go buy whatever bike parts I want. I don't feel bad. I can go to any bike shop. I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
But those are all positions I put myself in, you know. I put myself in a position to pick a side or to decide I didn't like someone, or and it's only now that it's been this long that I can go, okay, like if someone wants to call me out about something that I did back in the day, I'll own it. You know, I probably 99% sure that if someone says, "Hey man, back in the day you did this," I probably did it, you know. And I wasn't the nicest person and I probably regret some things that I did, but I absolutely do not regret a lot of the things that I did. And now that I'm past all of this, it's like the type of thing where you like watch a documentary about someone that was like abused and they couldn't talk about it for 10 years or something. I wasn't like abused, but this was a thing that made I had a lot of emotion wrapped in this, you know.
Mm.
This was my youth, this was my dad passing away, this was making and losing all of my friends, this was walking away from the thing that I loved and having to start completely over again and find something completely new, you know. And here I am on the other side, and I picked up a bunch of this stuff and set it around this table as references for things we might talk about. And I'm like looking at all this shit, and I'm like, I gave away or sold a lot of native stuff, but I kind of forgot how much work and effort I put into this and just made it my personality. I have this thing here that's pretty cool. Like I have this native skull, right? This is my logo,
The one, yeah.
the one, right? This is a sticker that I bought for 75 cents at a swap meet in Daytona Beach at a biker swap meet. And I thought this sticker was cool as shit. You can see it basically says it's saying screw helmet laws.
Yeah.
And I took a picture of this and set it on my desktop, my computer, and it was there for a year. And I was like, maybe I'll make a t-shirt design out of it. And I just put the goofy eyeballs in it and put native bikes, and that stuck, you know. Sometimes you find inspiration in nothing. Sometimes it's there the whole time, but I have no problem saying that like my entire image and everything was stolen from this sticker that I found at a flea market. So I have no problem giving people credit, you know, that deserve the credit. This guy Aaron that had GGSB screen printing helped me with all kinds of things over the years. I don't really, you know, I don't talk to him anymore. I don't want to, but he had a lot to do with what we did. You know, Aaron's dad, who's no longer with us, um, allowed us to fuck his whole property up and be shitheads and have a place to ride. And that prevented us from being bad people or doing whatever. Chad did all those things to sacrifice to have a skate park. It molded us as individuals. Like a lot of people on the backside that I don't talk to did do all kinds of things, really, really good things for the scene. But I just don't. Maybe one day I can talk to a lot of these people again, but I'm still not there. I'm finally where I can talk about all this, but I have to be like removed enough where I don't care about any of this shit anymore. And then it's back to business, you know?
Yeah.
Because at one point, all of us were really tight and really strong, and there's nothing I wanted to do more than like I want to get out of work. I want to get out of school. I want to whatever, get me on my fucking bike. I would even though it's the same skate park I'd been to a million times, I'm getting giddy driving into the parking lot because I can't get my bike out into the park quick enough. I
Yeah.
don't know who's there, who's inside, like who's going to be there when I get around the corner. And I have those feelings about stuff like music and carpentry now. So I know to not make it. I know to not start my own carpentry company. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
work for a company. I make stuff. I don't get emotionally involved in the things I'm making, and it's the way to do it.
Yeah, man. What a story that
Yeah,
has been.
it's a bunch. I tried to kind of it could go deep into all kinds of other directions with things, but there weren't a lot of other people my age doing DIY small brand stuff. It really was like not frowned upon, but it wasn't something that these older guys that own these brands were encouraging, because why would they want any kind of competition? But
Yeah.
I think once I got it out on the table, what I was doing, I wasn't competition to anyone. Um, because as soon as Credence started like really jumping back into cool trail frames again, I was like, oh well, I don't really need to do these trend kill frames anymore. Like it was just a thing, a placeholder for a market that didn't exist anymore. We did the street frame, that was really cool. I always wanted to do that, and then it just turned into the leather seats. I've been doing that a long time, and over the last 10 or 12 years, I've really honed in my ability to do that. I've probably made close to 1,000 custom leather seats,
Wow.
and I've sent seats to Australia, China, all over Europe, Australia. I'm really early on. I made a seat for a guy in Australia, and I sent it to him. And I'd put notes to everyone in the boxes, thanks for the support or whatever. And as a joke, I said, hey, if you ever hit a kangaroo, peel its skin off and send it, haha. And 3 months later, I get a box from Australia, and this guy went to a local tannery and just bought a piece of kangaroo skin and sent it to me, because kangaroo skin's not as expensive in Australia,
Yeah.
And he sent me this piece of kangaroo skin, and I still have the note from him, like, hey, thanks for the seat. I was able to go grab this, and it's from like 2011 or something. But that was the kind of stuff I hung on to, because I was like, whoa, like
Yeah.
this guy cared. He sent me a piece and I saved that, and I made cool shit out of it. Like I made a custom seat for Corey Faust out of it.
That's so cool.
The kangaroo skin is really thin, but it's super, super, super durable. And so I learned a lot of stuff about leather trying to do bike seats, and then applied it to other things like making guitar straps for all my favorite bands, and making custom seats for all the pros that I looked up to as a kid, like making seats for Matt Berenger and Rob Morales and Joe Rich, and all these people have seats on their bikes. Like Derek Gerard, I have a quad saw on my bike. That's important to me. Support a guy like that. He has a native seat on his bike. Things like that. I have the 6-shooter Matt Berenger bar ends. I have the brakes that guy just made. Mike Johnson, Mark Johnson. I have the brakes. I have trying to think. There's a guy named Ken that did a company called Zodiac in California. He did all kinds of stuff. He did U.S. manufacturing for Animal and a couple of other brands back in the day, but he did really sick, like his own dust covers for headsets and bottom bracket spacers and stuff like that. So the very first run of Trend Kill frames came with the aftermarket Zodiac dust cover, and then like he was a co-sponsor of the team. When you bought a new pair of native handlebars, they came with a brand new set of ODI long neck grips. ODI was a co-sponsor,
Yeah.
Just I wanted everyone on the team to have access to the coolest shit, and that's what it was. Like most of the guys on the team had a native frame, and then Profile or Madeira and ODI and all the stuff we were rocking. And so it looked weird, because in Central Florida, it was weird to not be riding Deco or Shadow or Sabrosa, or it's like, what is this? So I also like the variety that Native created in the way the bikes looked in the area and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a super unique way to customize your bike, that because of the effort it takes to make that stuff, not just
Yeah,
anybody's gonna do it.
yeah. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people do custom seats over the years, or people message me and ask me questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? And I have no problem, because I'm not actively doing anything. Like if you want to make seats, yeah, if I can go for it, I don't care. I think it's
Yeah.
cool. If anyone wants to make anything or wants to be creative, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
The one thing that I like to tell people though is like, be the best at it. That's important. Other than that, to be honest with you, Brant, I would probably talk to you on here for 12 hours if we didn't. I'm having a BMX conversation. I haven't done this in 4 or 5 years, but just generally, I fucking love bicycles. I think they're awesome, and I wanted to talk to you specifically because I see a lot of podcasts and a lot of people get into politics and sponsors and all this stuff, but you seem like you want to tell somebody's story, but I can tell you, that I go to a contest and I get excited seeing how someone's bike is set up, and you'll understand that, like maybe our BMX podcast or something. They're like, who cares, like I was very meticulous when I was younger. Before I had a car, my bike was always clean. I always every part was there for a reason. I had a Chris King headset and I had a
Yeah.
Thompson seat post and all that stuff. I was like, this is my race car or whatever, you know? And so I felt like you would understand, and probably the people that listen to your podcast would understand a little bit more. Um,
Well,
but
I genuinely appreciate that you gave me that opportunity, like of
yeah,
anybody, because like I said going into this, I didn't know anything. And
yeah,
so I had no idea the depth of your involvement in not only BMX as like an industry in a whole, but also Florida BMX and all of these things. So it's been really cool to learn about all of it. And it's like that's my favorite part of being
yeah,
like ignorant about these things is that
yeah.
I get to learn about it from
No
you.
expectation.
And,
Yeah,
yeah, and I'm learning from the guy who did it. So
yeah.
it's been really awesome. I can't believe that it's been over 2.5 hours that
Yeah,
we've been
that's
talking.
insane. You can feel free to edit it down if you need
There's
to.
no editing that's going to happen. I'm going to
But
push stop and I'm going to upload exactly what we did.
but Florida BMX has a crazy history, you know, and it's like if this is Florida BMX and I'm this little thing in the history of it, that's cool. I can be this little part, but Florida BMX was a crazy awesome thing before me. Florida BMX is going to continue to be a crazy awesome thing when I'm gone. But just like we said, you know, BMX is a thing. It floats around. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's not tied to anything. And I wish more people thought of it that way. So
Well, I feel like that can
it's
only
freestyle.
exactly. It's freestyle,
Freestyle.
and I think that that can only develop and those ideas can only be cultivated through conversations
Yeah.
like this one. So I
Yep.
appreciate you doing this, and if there's anything for me to put in the description for anyone else to go and look at or see, I will get that
Yeah.
from you and I'll put it there. I'm not going to put
Cool.
expectations out there, say anything
Yeah.
about it. I just want to say thank you for your time.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, thank you for listening. You know what I mean? Because sometimes I have friends that are younger that still kind of BMX, and I feel like the old man yelling at the sky. Like they're like I don't care, I don't want to hear it. Like you know, but this kid Alex that I hang out with, he used to ride. He was one of Trey's little brother's friends. Doesn't ride anymore. We both went kind of through this like I don't care about BMX anymore. And me and
Mm-hmm.
him both dusted off our bikes and went to this jam yesterday and smiled and had a good time. So it's all full circle, you know, whatever. It's
Yeah.
about going somewhere and having a good time with your friends and keep doing that shit. But I'll send you some links to like our old Vimeo account. We had all kinds of videos of debauchery and product and all that kind of stuff.
Sweet,
Um,
man.
other than that, I plan to do some cool stuff with Profile pretty soon. Some leather wrapped hubs and seats as a signature colorway for Corey Faust, who's one of my favorite people on earth. And yeah, I just say support people who are nice to you and support people who you believe in, and just have fun.
That's
That's all I
it.
can do.
That's
Yep.
it, man. Well, thanks again for your time, and
Cool.
I had a good time listening.
All right. Thanks, Brent.
Absolutely.